Hello and welcome to the Scoreboard Podcast. I'm your host, Rivka Boord of Jets X Factor, the home of the best New York Jets content on the internet. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Subscribe to jetsxfactor.com with code 80 and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Today we have on one of our old faithful, Joe Blewett. It's been a long time since we've been trying to get you on. Thanks for coming.
Yeah. I'm sorry for the unavailability that I have, but with the job, it's just
Well, it's been me
it's hard.
as much as you. It's been me just as much as you.
It's okay. Obviously, we have our constant communication, so we could figure it out. So I'm glad we made it work.
Okay, well, so the first thing I guess that came up this week a lot was just the 53-man roster. So I wanted to ask you what your initial reactions were, any moves you liked, any moves you didn't like, just a general question.
Yeah, it's pretty standard. I don't think there's anything crazy about it, and we'll see if there's like maybe a surprise release or two. Obviously, once Yeboah and Leaky Fotu. I know it's not Leaky Fotu, it's Leaky Fatu, whatever it is. I'm calling him Leaky Fotu for the rest of the season.
It's Lecky Fotu.
Yeah. And until I hear it a couple times on the broadcast, then maybe I'll change. I can't right now. But once those guys come back, maybe we'll see like a surprise cut or two. But there's really not much surprising, right? Like it's not like years past where you have like a bunch of UDFAs who are fighting, bottom of the roster guys. Like it was pretty like stock. Where maybe there was like 5 or 6 spots up for grab. Now, obviously, we could say that like, hey, 3 UDFAs and Tack McKinley making it is a surprise. I would say I'm the most surprised that Eric Watts made it. I didn't really see so much from him in the preseason. He did have the touchdown saving pass deflection, but still, I wasn't overly impressed with him. I'm assuming he's probably the first guy gone once Hassan Reddick is back, and then you still have to make 2 more spots after that, right? So you have Reddick, you have you also have Leaky coming back, or Lecky, and then you have Yeboah coming back. So it's gonna be interesting to see who they cut after that point. But I think Watts is probably the first guy off this roster.
I mean, Watts, I assume, got the spot only because Reddick isn't here. But again, we don't know when Reddick is going to come back. And then there begs the question: even if Reddick doesn't come back, the first time they want to make a move, Watts is probably the one gone. The thing is, those 2 guys, Yeboah and Fotu, have to miss at least 4 games. So Salah said something about Fotu being ready for week 3, but probably week 4. He can't come back before week 5.
Yeah. So, which is gonna be interesting to see, like when Lecky comes back. It's the first couple of weeks. Obviously, we're not facing like the strongest teams in the world here, but week 1, you're talking about a good rushing team, and obviously a lot of that depends on Trent Williams. But it's a thing where the Jets what are they going to do in terms of their run defense with the interior? Because I'm assuming it'll be Q at 3 tech and Kinlaw as like a 0 or a 1 with the added weight, but then behind them, Solomon Thomas and Leonard Taylor. I'm a little bit concerned about the run defense versus the Niners. But we'll see, because if they don't have Trent Williams, I'm not so concerned. Because I know you guys, we've been breaking down on the site, a lot of their offensive line, like backups, guys who barely have played in preseason. You have like rookies. You have a bunch of guys who are not the most impressive. So Trent Williams plays, he doesn't play, I'm not so concerned about the run defense. If he does, we'll see how it works out with some of those backup interior defensive linemen the Jets have. I think that's the biggest concern with the defense at this point. So,
I mean, I'm worried about their edge rush too. Like you have JJ. They got rid of 2 of their other edge rushers. I know JFM wasn't necessarily a world beater at edge, but he was at least maybe average to slightly above average. They don't have anyone proven beyond JJ. Now, the truth is, last year they also didn't, in a sense. They came in with JFM. Lawson was hurt, and obviously if Lawson had played like he did in 2022, they would have had at least another average edge rusher. But once he was hurt and he was basically gone, you came into the season with JFM on the edge, and then you had JJ, who hadn't really shown much as a rookie, and then you had Bryce Huff, who had shown a lot as the previous year, but only on 16% of the snaps. So you didn't necessarily have like a ton of proven edge rush depth either. I remember being concerned about it when they first came in. Obviously, after a few games, JJ picked it up, and then Huff went off, and now everyone remembers it as the dominant Jets pass rush. But so in a sense, that could happen again this year. But beyond JJ, there's a lot of unknown on the edge also.
Yeah, I would say it was more proven last year, just because you had Huff coming off a lot of the pressures. We knew he was a good edge rusher coming into last year. Like we were convinced of that. We know JFM was at least a decent edge rusher. You know, you have a good year from JJ in his rookie year, so I'd say we had kind of like more dart throws, you know, to be like a good edge rush group. So without Reddick, it's a little bit concerning because, you know, listen, like McDonald, I think he'd be a good edge rusher, but he's still unproven at the NFL level, right? Like he hasn't proven anything. We know who he is, and we have because if you were a 49ers fan, I'm sure you're not, you know, necessarily scared of Will McDonald yet. And then JJ had 7.5 sacks last year, which I think he's a decent edge rusher. Now at least like 3 or 4 of those sacks were either effort sacks. They were, you know, the interior of the defensive line pushing the pocket and then, you know, running right into JJ. You have the 1 sack on Josh Allen, which was just clearly from a stunt design. So like, it's not like he got 7.5 sacks and they were all like one-on-one wins and stuff like that. So and again, I'm not trying to be negative. I want to be positive at this point of the year. I think JJ's maybe a little bit overrated by Jets fans in terms of as an edge rusher. He still has a lot to prove, in my opinion, to be like a legitimate, you know, guy who you're actually concerned about. Right now, he's a very legit, very good run defense and pass rusher. So what, you know, does he take that next step this year? I think he obviously is going to improve, but those are going to be your 2 guys starting, or at least the primary edge rushers. And then Michael Clemens, we know, is not going to offer so much. And even though we were impressed with Tack McKinley and with guys like McGregor, it's a lot different when you're playing starting tackles versus not, you know, third string tackles. I'm not saying that they can't be successful, but it's obviously a huge step up in competition. So going into this game, it's a huge question mark. And that's kind of like the thing about it. It's like, you know, if Reddick doesn't play game 1, okay, hopefully, obviously, they win. After that, if they don't have Reddick, I'm sure they could win the next. They should win the next 4 games, right? Like I know any given Sunday, all that crap. If you lose to the Pats, the Broncos, the Vikings, like, okay, let's get serious here. Like the Jets should be at least 4-1 going into Buffalo or going to the Buffalo game in week 6. So I'm not so concerned after week 1 with Reddick, but if you want to, he may be that difference maker, that one play to make, you know, he might get that strip sack that wins him the game, gets him that field goal, whatever it may be. And then for the playoffs too, it's like, oh, we don't need Reddick. It's like, yeah, we don't need Reddick to maybe make the playoffs, but to win the Super Bowl, you need everything you got. Like you gotta, the AFC is stacked. You know, Lamar Jackson and Mahomes and Burrow, and the Steelers are always find ways to win. And, you know, they have a better situation they did last year with Russell Wilson versus Pickett. Like there's so many good teams in the AFC to just say that we don't need Reddick. I think it's a little bit, you're a little bit too, like, maybe not like positive, I would say, but you're being a little bit naive. You need your best edge rusher to win the Super Bowl. And I'm not saying they can't do it without him, but obviously he greatens, he obviously, you know, he greatens the chances of them. So they need him at some point. What exactly happens, I don't know. I think the hard deadline is it Monday or Tuesday that he has to report by to be active for the game? I think it's one of those days.
I don't know if that's a hard deadline. I think that Rich Cimini said that those are the dates to look out for, that usually if a guy doesn't report by then, they don't play week 1. Yeah. I don't know if that's a hard deadline, meaning he won't have practiced during the week. I'm not sure. Maybe I got that wrong, but it seemed like he was saying more like look out for it because that's when usually players report if they're going to play week 1.
Yeah, I thought it was a hard deadline, even if not.
I might be wrong.
Yeah, I could be wrong too. So if he comes later in the week, even if he comes now, like I think it's a thing where he's not going to play 65% of the reps. You know, obviously, I think it's more of a thing like, hey, he's going to play that Bryce Huff role, that McDonald role from last year. He's going to be on third downs. He's going to have 15 to 20 snaps rushing the quarterback, and that's about it. You don't want to, obviously, you don't want to ramp him up too quickly and have a soft tissue injury. I know he's out there double swiping medicine balls, but that's not real football. So it sucks that we're at this point, but it needs to end soon because he's obviously a huge piece to them making a Super Bowl run. You're talking about a guy who's obviously top 5 in sacks the last 4 years. Now, is he going to do that again this year? You know, is he maybe falling off a little bit? Yeah, but at the end of the day, I still think he's a top 10 edge rusher in terms of rushing the quarterback. Now, run defense, you tie that in there. Is he a top 10 DN in the league? I don't know about that, but he's obviously a really effective, edge rusher, and they need him this year. They're going to be obviously facing teams who actually need to pass the ball for the first time in 20 years versus the Jets. So having a guy who can actually sack the quarterback consistently is going to be huge.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, you mentioned Will McDonald. I wanted to talk about him also. Robbie keeps insisting McDonald cannot start in base. And if you watched his preseason, he played pretty poorly against the run. Limited snaps, but got pinned inside a lot. And I actually went through and watched every single run defense rep from him last year just in a row. And you notice sometimes like he gets just dominated by tackles. Like, and it's not even because, people keep talking about his weight. It's not, I don't know if it's necessarily even because of his weight. I think it's because of his hands. He gets caught first, like where the tackle gets his hand in his chest or just grips him a lot. And that was one thing I noticed even on your review is that he just, yes, when he gets he gets around someone without being contacted that much, then he's fine. But if someone gets a hand on him, and it happens a lot where they get first contact, he's washed. And so that you see that in the pass game and the run game. So kind of like, I mean, you saw that even in the preseason. He had those nice spin moves, but he doesn't really have much else. So like, do you expect McDonald to be able to even play the Huff role this year, where he plays 40%? Forget about playing in base, where then we're going to end up with Michael Clemens starting.
Yeah, it's funny. I was just on a Twitter Spaces with like PD and all those guys, and I mentioned the same thing. It's like people mention his weight. I was 6'2", 6'3", 242, something like that, right? Michael Parsons is 6'2", 6'3", 245. And obviously everybody carries weight differently. Like there could be guys who are stronger than there could be a 245-pound guy who's stronger than a guy who's 270 pounds. It's just kind of how you're built and what you're gifted with from God. But I don't, like you said, it's perfect. I don't think it's a lack of strength thing for him. Now, could he add maybe a few more pounds? Could he get to 250 in a couple of years? Like, fine. I don't think you want to add so much weight to him because you don't want him to lose that flexibility and stuff. So I don't think it's a lack of strength thing. Exactly like you said. He loses first contact, hands will be wide, all that stuff. So do I think his technique can change throughout the year? Like, yeah, but right now in him as a edge defender, I'm not, because of the technique. And like you said about the pass rush, it's a thing where, people are gonna be sitting on that spin move. They'll sit on it. So you have to start turning speed to power, and guys kind of getting on their heels and turning speed into power. That's to become like a really effective edge rusher. You have to have kind of two things to do, instead of just that inside spin. So yeah, I think he has a capability to do it. Now, is he going to do that this year? No, I'm not confident in that. And then you have past that, it's like Clemens starting in base. It's like, okay, so it's 1st and 10. He starts to rush the pass. Like Clemens, like, yeah, he could pinch the pocket a little bit because he bull rushes guys, but we know what he is as an edge rusher. He's not it in terms of that. So yeah, it's a little bit of a concern right now with the run defense when he's on the field, and then it's a concern if he's not on the field because you don't really have a pass rusher opposite of JJ who's worth anything. And obviously, again, Tack and McGregor and stuff, but it's a different ballgame when the actual season gets kicked off.
I mean, am I crazy for preferring to see what Tack can do over wanting to see Clemens in base? Just because look, it's a little different with Fotu not there, because what I was really worried about was that Fotu would show up. They would play Fotu and Clemens on first down. And then you have two guys who had a sub 5.5% pass pressure rate last year on the field at the same time. And Michael pointed out in an article, he said, even Clemens, they try to keep him. He had the highest run to pass ratio of any defensive end in the NFL last year. And yet he still played the pass on 43% of his downs. So even if it's 57-43, he's basically 2-to-1 run, or not 2-1, 2-to-1, 3-to-2 pass rush to run defense to pass rush. He's still going to face pass rush situations on 40% of his downs, and he's a total zero. Like, not even close. Like, as a rookie, he was like, okay, he did something. Last year, he was just completely stonewalled. And you're going to have that on the field on first down, which is, I mean, yeah, you could say it's more of a running down, but teams pass on first down. Like, I don't know if there's such a thing as an obvious rundown, except like in goal line situations.
Yeah. And I'm actually looking up Tack McKinley's like stats from the beginning of his career, but it's not like it's I think we agree on Clemens. I listen to Sabo too, and I know he's a little bit higher on Clemens for whatever reason. We can disagree about that one time where me and him are on a stream, and we'll argue about it a little bit because I don't see it. But yeah, with Tack, like he's a guy who, and obviously had some injuries and stuff, and he fell off. But like his rookie, he had 6 sacks. His next year he had 7 sacks. His next year after that he had 3.5 sacks. Like he's something as an edge rusher. And we saw it in the preseason. Again, it's against tight ends, it's against backups, all this stuff. But like I showed some plays of him being actually impressive in the run game. So do I think he's as strong as a Michael Clemens? No, but how far all like, because the thing about Clemens is too, like, yeah, you have to have power to set the edge, but you also have to have like smarts. You also have to have some type of change of direction ability to be able to bring guys down. Like how many times do you see him like running with like overstriding and just like he like loosey goosey type of guy? Like he almost looks like, you know, you ever see one of those things at like the car dealerships, those type of guys, like he's almost like that, but like yoked up. So like, you know, yeah, like he might be a better run defender than Tack, but by how much? And then you factor in the fact that he's definitely a better pass rusher than Clemens. He offers, you know, the explosion and all of that stuff and snap timing. So I don't think you're crazy at all for wanting to see Tack over Clemens in base, because Clemens, again, like he's a jag at this point. Let's be real. And he talks like he's a superstar, and the act is getting old. And I'm always one of those guys. Like I didn't like Becton, and I hope Becton sucks with the Eagles. I'm sorry to say that, but like, you know, the break free of the chains with the Jets thing. He's always been childish. Like we ate him to 400 pounds. Like the Jets force feed food down his throat. Like, no, he did that himself. Like he has no personal accountability for himself. And Clemens, again, like you're trying to fight Deion Dawkins. You're running in the tunnel after him. You're showing up with a baseball bat. Like that was one of the cheesy. And again, like I know people love it because, you know, they're infatuated with the Jets, but showing up shirtless with a baseball bat, like you're around a bunch of tough guys. If somebody did that in my football practice, like this guy better be good and back this up, because like this is kind of crazy. So his act got really old for me really quickly, and now he's not backing up on the field. I'm over it. So yeah, I would love to see Tack over him. Honestly, like if these guys come back and Clemens was cut, I wouldn't mind it. I don't think he's really anything to write home about. I think he's kind of definition of a jag, in the NFL at this point.
I mean, honestly, if you're going to take a jag, I'd rather the younger jag and Brady McGregor. Like, you know, seriously, like, you know, Clemens going into his third year, he's 27. At least I think McGregor's 23. Like, at least we have a guy who maybe you could get something. And I'm not, look, I like what we saw from McGregor in preseason. I watched some of his college tape. I don't think he has much pass rush chops. Like, I think he can be a decent run defender. I think his pass rush, like, I don't know if you saw him in the preseason, he's basically double swiping all the time. I know he set it up a little bit better. Like sometimes he would, you know, kind of go in and out, or like, you know, set himself a softer edge and things like that. I don't know if it's going to work against starting caliber tackles, but I'd still rather see McGregor. McGregor's 267. You're telling me Clemens was 272 last year. He's, you know, similar weight. Maybe Clemens a little stronger, but still, like, honestly, I'd rather see any of their edge defenders over Clemens. And as far as his act, Robbie keeps saying, yeah, when the Jets first drafted him, everyone loved it. I'm like, first of all, I think he's the only Joe Douglas draft pick ever who had like off the field concerns coming out of college. Like we know what happened with Becton and Elijah Moore after they were drafted, but I don't think that stuff was coming out of college so much. Yeah, Becton with the weight, but you never heard like really the kind of stuff he said. The only guy who came out of college, I think Clemens had some trouble with the law when he was in college or whatever. I don't remember what exactly what it was, but I remember hearing he was a super senior to 25 years old. And he's also has off the field concerns. And I was like, why on earth would you take a 25-year-old edge defender? And your motto is that you like to take good, you know, wholesome type of guys, and then you take a guy like that for no reason. It just didn't make any sense to me. And I know everyone said, oh, 1JD, everyone loved him. I'm like, I don't know. To me, I just saw a big lumbering guy who's, again, as a jag, even as a rookie. And like, yeah, okay, he's on the field, he's doing something in the run game, but like, I didn't really pay much attention to him. And then last year, the baseball bat thing, like, just it's not something that's ever going to get me. Like that to me, like everyone was going crazy over it. That's not my. I'm like, okay, if you're good, fine, you can afford to talk some trash. Like, I mean, look, Sauce talks some trash, and because he's good, he gets, he's able to do it. But, Brees, I mean, what he did against that giant, like rubbing the football against his ankles after he scored a touchdown in the joint practice. I mean, that's pretty, that's pretty out there. But like, again, Brees is good, so he can do it. But Clemens, I mean, look, if I were Deion Dawkins, I would be really, I mean, he's taken it over the top. But if I was Deion Dawkins, I'd be like, who is this idiot? Like, who is this guy? He hasn't even done anything in the NFL, and he's going after, like, I mean, Dawkins is at least an above average tackle. He's like, what on earth? So what on earth are you doing? So I don't know. I'm so out on Clemens, and I'd rather see anyone. Now I just
Yeah,
have to get to the
again.
chat because
Oh,
sorry,
sorry.
I have to get. I'll let you respond, and then I'm going to get to the chat
Okay.
because we have a couple of super chats.
Yeah, it's a thing again. Like you're carrying a baseball bat shirtless into a room full of tough guys. It's just I don't think they buy it. I didn't buy it. Like again, he's intimidating. Like I'm sitting here at 185 pounds, like talking, but like I wouldn't be necessarily intimidated because you're shirtless carrying a bat. It's like, okay, are you gonna hit me with the bat? Like what are we doing here? But like in terms of the draft pick, I think it's more so it's probably like, hey, he has that mindset that they like they like tough guys, like they like that. So I could see it working out, and or at the time of the pick, like it working out in terms of the mindset. Okay, he's going to be a rotational guy who's a good edge defender. Okay, like if that's a fifth round pick for you, and that's what he is, fine. Or it might have been a little bit earlier actually. Was he a fourth round pick? Yeah, a fourth round pick. If he could be a solid edge defender and just be a role player, that's fine. Like you'll sign up for that for most fourth round picks, but it just hasn't worked out because, I don't think his athleticism translates. He's getting a little bit older now. And again, I think the tough guy act is kind of worn out. I don't think NFL tackles are afraid of Michael Clemens. Like it's not like he's going to like break into their house and murder them. Like it's like you have to beat them on a rep. Like I'm sure they're much more afraid of Nick Bosa than they are Clemens. Like is he gonna bull rush them so hard their chest is gonna hurt? Like no, like they see savages all the time. Like Aaron Donald's scary. Nick Bosa's scary. Like Michael Clemens is not scary because he wears a nose ring and thinks he probably is tough, but like what I'm saying, like that doesn't hold weight in the NFL.
I don't know. So. Michael Parsons at 245 looks a lot stronger than Michael Clemens does. If you watch him bull rush, he's I mean, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, like standing over the center and I kind of like stutter stepping them before the snap. Like that's scary because he's gonna beat your ass and sack the quarterback, and that loses you and your family money. Like that's scary to me. A guy wearing a nose ring and bull rushing me is not scary if he's not gonna get to the quarterback. Who cares? Like nobody cares. So, the personality stuff, like back then I didn't like the Clemens stuff. I don't like. Now, if he can turn into a good player and be a good role player as an edge defender, fine. If he can develop into that, but just because he's strong doesn't mean you're a good edge defender. Again, you have to be able to do read option. He gets bit by misdirection all the time. If there's any type of horizontal run, he can't tackle the guy because he's not athletic enough. So I think people like it's not a miscast. I just think that people equate strong, good run defense. There's a lot more to it than that. So, and there's times where like, I'm sure, I don't know if you watch all the reviews of him, but like there's times where he's blocked by a tight end out of the play. And now I'm not saying he's like moved. He's not moved by the tight end, but he's not shutting the tight end quick enough to make a play on the run in the run game on his side. So yeah, he's strong, but he's getting blocked out of plays by tight ends. So like how good of a run defender is he really? He's really not. So I would prefer to see really anybody else over Clemens at this point.
But it's not going to happen because we know that the Jets have their, you said the word infatuation before. They have their infatuation with Clemens, and it just it is what it is. Yep. Okay, we have a new member over here, Jake. So Jake, thanks for joining. Awesome. And then we have your person, Allison. Allison, thanks for the super chat. I'll let you address this one.
Yeah. Okay. So I think Allison's a voice to text person. Let's say obviously $100. Like, hey, I appreciate you supporting us. That's obviously huge. But let's see, they have a former Packers player. The Vikings do, Aaron Jones. So the Vikings have a former Packers player in Aaron Jones. The Packers are going to get beat because he's that good. Because financially, I think they could beat the Vikings. Is there someone they? Ainge Thenai story maybe down where trade deadline trade. So I have no idea what the last thing means. Unless you're OBJ, is there some way?
I don't know if she's asking if they could trade for Aaron Jones at the trade deadline. I don't know because of the former Packer.
OBJ in there. If you're talking about OBJ, unless I'm seeing like a different graphic, I don't think they'll trade for OBJ.
I don't see OBJ, but either way, OBJ is on the pup list right now. And there were words out of. There were rumors out of Miami that he was just basically going to take an in-season retirement, meaning not actually retire, but just take his money and kind of sit out.
Yeah. In terms of Aaron Jones on the Vikings, I think they lost a good player in Aaron Jones, a guy who is versatile. The Packers also lost A.J. Dillon now, so their starting running back is Josh Jacobs, who a lot of people expected the fall off to come last year, but I think he actually played well last year, to my remembrance. That's
in 23 or 22.
In 23.
I look, you were the one who told me to keep him in the third round, and he was horrible last year. The only way he was ever like even viable was because we had a PPR league, and he caught balls out of the backfield. But on the ground, I think he averaged like 3.5 yards per carry or something.
Okay, so
like
I'm gonna be favorable to myself and say that I was in a league with you and I set you up for failure because I want to win the league. But realistically, I probably thought he'd be good. But realistically, I don't watch enough like Josh. But I know. Okay, so he fell off last year, so I know people are anticipating a fall if it happened last year. So what is he gonna do with the Packers? I don't know. I would probably take Aaron Jones versus him just because Aaron Jones is more versatile. But in terms of the Vikings beating the Packers, I would say the Packers are still probably the more of a favorite in that division, probably second in that division.
The Vikings are starting Sam Darnold. I think that's about what you need to know.
Yeah, and can Jordan Love follow it up? Like, it's kind of wild that they gave Jordan Love the contract he did after only like half a good season and a good playoff game or two. So maybe the Packers have to prove it more. But I still do think the Packers are a better team than the Vikings. But I could see the Aaron Jones swap for Josh Jacobs, hurting them. Now, Allison, if you want to clarify on the last sentence, I don't know.
I think she did on this one. She said just whoever damaged me, but the next one I'm talking about Aaron get the trade deadline, meaning she meant to get. I don't know what that first sentence means.
Yeah.
But yeah. I don't think they need him though. They have Breece Hall.
You have a guy who's legitimately a top 3 running back in the NFL. You're not going to trade for an Aaron Jones at the trade deadline. If anything, I could see it being like, hey, obviously, like Devontae feels inevitable at this point, right? Like I would say it's over like an 75% chance. Like I would really bet some decent amount of money that he's going to be a Jet just because Gardner Minshew, their schedule's tough at the beginning of the year. He wants to be a Jet. He wants to play with Aaron Rodgers. He wants to win a Super Bowl. His salary is, Rivka better than I suck with the salary stuff. You know that, but like he's $7-8 million at the point because it's like prorated. So $8 million for a top 10 receiver to pair up with Garrett Wilson and Mike Williams and Conklin and Breece. Like that's a Super Bowl winning skill group, and not including the offensive line, the defense, all that stuff. So I think they would steer more towards going for a guy like Devontae, or even like, hey, you have an injury on the offensive line. Let's say let's go a little bit lesser. I'm going to try to be positive here. Hopefully no injuries. I'll knock on wood, but like John Simpson goes down, maybe trading for a guard. Like there's some, I see there being much more, potential positions they would need at the trade deadline over a running back because you have the 2 young guys. You have Breece, who hopefully will be healthy, but he's a stud. I think Aaron Jones would be not redundant. It's just unnecessary. He's going to play 25% of the snaps are going to trade for him. So I don't think that would happen. But we definitely appreciate the super chats, Allison.
I mean, not just besides the fact that Jones is the Vikings starting running back, so they wouldn't trade him.
Yeah, but, unless it's a thing where like, hey, they tank, they are sucking at the beginning of the year. I don't know the contract that he has. I'm assuming it's not so long.
It's not. No, I don't remember. It was like a couple of years.
Yeah. So like, hey, can we get rid of some of that money and trade him for a 5th round pick? Like, I guess it's a possibility, but I just don't see the Jets making a move for a running back, especially when you have a top 3 guy in Breece Hall and who by the end of this 2024 season may be legitimately the best running back in the NFL.
Mm-hmm. So let's go to this one now. Nose Kills, thanks for the super chat. So is it our coaching scheme or scouting that's getting so much out of the defensive line UDFAs? How much should this do to our expectations from Kinlaw, Fotu, and everyone else?
Yeah, I would say it's a little bit of both. Like, now it's hard to answer specific questions about how they coach these guys because I'm not there. And like, there's so many times I'm sure you're watching the reviews where I'm like, I wonder how they coach this or how they teach this or what they're asking this guy to do. That I would love to ask the players, like, hey, what was your read? What was the call here? That I could never know. And I think people are like way too quick on like Twitter, or like these people who want to be film guys are like, oh, this is definitely the play. It's like, how do you know that? Like, there's no way to know that unless you were in the room. But with them, I think they're great. Obviously, White Cotton is a seemingly a good defensive line coach. JFM and JJ, like everybody that they've been developing. Even Solomon Thomas has improved this game since he's been here. Jefferson, Sheldon Rankin. So they clearly have a good coach there, but how much is it coach for a scheme? Again, it's kind of hard to tell. The scheme is relatively simple in terms of like, hey, just shoot a gap, get the quarterback. So there's not a lot of thinking. And that's why a lot of people love to play in these schemes, is because they don't have to think and they can just play ball. And that's when these guys are best, because you have to think, okay, well, if this linebacker is going outside, I have to go to the inside. I have to attack the inside shoulder. I have to stand them up, win the A gap, but I also got to be able to play the B gap if they're like in a lag technique. Like, it's a lot of thinking into gapping and stuff like that. So when you're able to just, hey, rush off the edge, get the freaking quarterback. Like a lot of guys like that. And then they have the flexibility with like some of their exchanges that I talk about in the reviews. Like, hey, this guy, he kind of cuts you off. He's in front of your face. You don't have to win that B gap, win the A gap. Like, and then the linebackers, taught to read that exchange. So it gives them a lot of freedom on the defensive line. So I'm sure that helps as well. But that versus the coaching, again, it's really hard for me to say because one, how do you quantify that? And two, I'm not in the room to see exactly how they're being coached. So it's kind of hard to tell exactly, but it's definitely a combination of both. And obviously, I appreciate skills.
I do think that Quinnen's development is a pretty big. I mean, I know Quinnen came out really good, but honestly, you look at his progression. Like I know in 2020 he kind of looked like ready to break out. 2021 it kind of takes a little step back, and then 2022 he explode. The fact that in his fourth year he put it all together, I suspect that has something to do with coaching, because if you look at him, you've said even that he still, doesn't necessarily play always with the leverage in the pass rush that you would want to see from him. Like sometimes he rushes a little high and things like that. But just in terms of being able to harness his power and really just, become just one of the best, just interior power rushers in the game, maybe the best, and one of the certainly a top 2-3 defensive tackle in the game. I think that is a very, very big credit to their defensive line. I think also JJ from year 1 to year 2. I know he's certainly not an elite edge rusher. He's maybe average, slightly above average, but he even just turning into that from what we saw when he was a rookie, where he really couldn't win much. And then in his second year, kind of even just learning how to use his speed to power better and learning how to, again, he won with his hands more than he did ever as a rookie. I know it's still not perfect and he gets caught up and he kind of doesn't have counter moves, but it was definitely a lot better than it was in his rookie season. And I definitely give the coaches credit for that. I think, you watch some of their players, I do think, the fact that the UDFA's made the team, I don't think that that's purely coaching. Leonard Taylor certainly came out of college with a ton of talent. So it's like not overly surprising to see him dominate in the preseason, but I do think overall there's a reason to there is a reason to think that the Jets coaching staff could get something out of play. I mean, look, the fact that McKinley looks like an NFL edge rusher again after being out of the league for a couple of years. I mean, again, a scheme might have to do with that, but to an extent also, like maximizing the talent that they have in their players is something that the Jets defensive coaching staff tends to do well. Now, I wanted to ask you I wanted to ask you just part of this question. You can continue on that one. Just how much should this do to our expectations from Kinlaw? So Fotu not as much because it's run defense, but the fact that the Jets have gotten a lot out of their defensive players, what are your expectations for Kinlaw? Do you think he can take a step forward this year?
Yeah, I think I honestly think that's an excellent point that you made. And it's why it's good to have a conversation. You throw things back and forth. It's like, it's not only this, it's the scheme, but it's also like the scheme has been there, but you see players progress from year 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. So their progression has been, upwards. So that's a good point about the development, which is from the coaches, and obviously being more comfortable with the scheme and all that stuff as well. But the coaching is definitely a good point. But yeah, I expect more from Kinlaw, one, because he's healthy. He had his best year last year, so assuming health, okay, great. He added, 30 pounds. Is all that muscle? There's literally no way, unless you're taking steroids, to add that much weight. And I just, even eating 10 chicken breasts, 1485, there's just no way to do that. So I think some of that probably had to be a little bit of fat as well, which is fine, depending on how you carry it. But I think he'll be a better player because who's around him. On the interior with Quinnen Williams. Not that the 49ers don't have talent around them, but none of them are Quinnen Williams on the inside to play next to. So with the added weight plus who he's directly playing next to, I do expect him to take a step forward. And some of that's just blind faith. It's founded, but like I have faith in the coaching staff to improve these guys. Now again, and I'll always say it, it's like, at the time of the signing, I like Jefferson more than Kinlaw based on their tape coming, before coming to the team. With that being said, if Kinlaw can reach his potential, his ceiling is immaculate. Like he's a dominant physical species, dominant species of a player. Where Quentin Jefferson was just a pass rusher. Kinlaw, if he puts together his technique, like he's super powerful, super explosive. So if he gets his technique down and he understands his scheme and stuff, like he could be a very good player for the Jets. Even Rankin's another guy like Q Jeff, like good pass rushers, never going to be guys in the run game. But there's a reason that Kinlaw was a top 10 pick, was he? At least a first round pick. I forget exactly where he was taken. There's been so many drafts and so many players we talked about, but
it was a first round.
First round. I think he was top 10. If I'm not, I could be wrong.
So Kinlaw was 14.
Oh, 14. Okay. So top half of the first round. Regardless, he has a lot of talent. So I do expect more out of him. Now, how big is the leap for him? I'm not sure. But I am expecting him to be a pretty decent player for the Jets because of their staff, because of their development, because of the added weight, assuming he still has the explosion he did. But he was already super strong at 300 pounds. 330, he could be an absolute unit in the middle of that defense. And that's why I do think he probably starts in base with Q. But then the problem is and it was one of my issues with the Jets in their first couple of years. And I didn't track it. Maybe I should chart stuff again. Full-time job, kid, wife, I don't want to get a divorce, so I can't do everything. But it's a thing where their first couple of years, they would rotate all the receivers out for all of the backups. They rotate all the offense or defensive linemen out for all of the backups. So is it a thing where they stagger a little bit, where they want Kinlaw with Solomon Thomas or with Leonard Taylor? Or is it going to, because my concern is, okay, those guys come out and then it's Solomon Thomas and Taylor. I'm not so confident in the run defense in that instance. So how do they stagger it? Probably not. I still think they kind of did their rotations last year. To my remembrance. Okay, you're nodding, which is good. Again, I forget off the top of my head. But yeah, with Kinlaw, I do expect a leap.
Yeah. Okay. So, the interesting thing about Kinlaw is, first of all, I don't think he actually gained 30 pounds. Or he just carries them really well, because he doesn't, I didn't see him in pads, but at least when he's up there on the podium, he doesn't look 330. He really doesn't. Now, to the point where, he's listed at 320, I think 324 from his draft day. So I thought he was that big. So then when I heard he was playing at 305, I was like, okay. He kind of looked lean, or he didn't look 325 when he was playing. He never did. But I think he still doesn't. So even if he gained some weight that was fat and not muscle, I still think he carries his weight well regardless. So if he gained a little bit of weight, that's mostly muscle, to be able to take on, as he said, Michael pointed out, I think he wrote an article on it. He said he did it partially to be able to take on double teams. Now, it's not just weight and strength that will help you take on double teams, but if he can also use the added weight to get better leverage, in the run game, again, that could help him. That could help him a lot, because you saw it in his review. He gets washed a lot in the run game, even though he's supposed to be very, very physically dominant. So you kind of want to see that come up, but we'll see what the Jets can do with him. We'll see what they can do with him overall. I wasn't thrilled with the signing. I want the Jefferson back. And now at this point, look, it bothers me to go into the season without proven players, especially in a place that's so critical for the Jets' success. Look, the defensive line is the linchpin of what they do, right? Being able to get pressure with 4. And so it's not great, but I have to, at this point, I think, as covering the Jets and being a Jets fan, you have to hope that their coaching staff knows what it's doing.
Yeah, and I think I saw Hawk in here, facts, you can't gain that much weight. If you were a newbie and you've never lifted before, could you gain close to 20 pounds maybe in 3 months with some supplements, some peptides, some creatine, some T boosters? Yeah, you could probably get pretty close. But for a guy who's already an absolute unit, I just don't. It's just not possible to me. So yeah, I think that's probably a little bit overblown. But yeah, I'm excited. Again, it is, if there is one weakness to the defense, it is going to be the run defense. But again, how much are they going to be getting run on this year, considering the fact that we're going to hopefully score some points? Now it's going to be a thing where it's an interesting balance, because there's going to be some games where teams are not going to run the ball at all because we're up 10-0 in a blink of an eye. But there's also going to be games where it's a little bit back and forth, and teams may want to play a little bit of ball control on the Jets because their defense, one teams that get rid of the ball quickly, assuming Reddick is back. You know, if you are going to beat the Jets, it's more like nickel and dime, east and west stuff. You know, they play like off coverage. You know, get them on hitches and drags and all of this stuff. And I think teams will want to control the ball because obviously the offense is explosive. So it's kind of dependent on the start of the game how much they'll get run on. But yeah, if there is one weakness, again, it's that run defense. So how are they going to hold up? And if Trent Williams plays in week 1, or it's going to be a big test for them. And then after that, I'm like the Colts are a good run team. I don't know how good the Steelers are. I know like Warren's okay. I think Najee Harris is really overrated. So how many teams are really going to test them? I don't know, but like, hey, at a certain point, we might be playing the Ravens in the divisional round, and they're going to run the ball with Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry. So you better be on your P's and Q's there. So it's interesting how that develops throughout the year, but I don't think it'd be as emphasized this year because again, teams are not going to beat us 10-6. 10-3, like the Pats or the Jets score 0. Like it's just, I'm excited to actually see some offense this year. It's just, it's something I've never experienced. I was just talking about another podcast, breaking down years of Adam Gase film. Like I cannot wait to watch actual offensive football. Like it's so freaking exciting. So hopefully we get a great year. And realistically, again, it's a thing where like the Jets should be winning 11, 12 games. Give me a home playoff game. I've been to so many bad playoff. I've had season tickets for almost like 13 years. I've been to so many bad games. I cannot even imagine what I would do in a playoff game. I told you a couple of days ago, like I lose my voice in intros, and the Jets would be like 2-14. I'm losing my voice in intros. So playoff football, we deserve it. Again, the run defense is going to be a big kind of tie-in to all of that, and how can we hold up against some of these teams?
I mean, then the big question is they're playing Christian McCaffrey in week 1. And even if Trent Williams isn't there, I mean, the thing about the Jets run defense, this is what was interesting. We talk about up the middle and everything, but especially early last season when they were beaten, a lot of it was outside. A lot of it was like on tosses and things like that. I mean, one thing I noticed on talk about Michael Clemens setting the edge. I mean, he gets cracked like a ton. All of them get cracked. Like, meaning, they throw a toss and it's just like pin them inside. And like, I mean, I get that the edge rusher might not get there, but if you can string it out, then, you hold your leverage, then you can help the linebackers get there. But then every time they automatically, there's just a numbers advantage for the offense when they run tosses against the Jets. And so that kind of concerns me also. I mean, even let's say, okay, Reddick isn't great as a run defender, but he has more awareness than, let's say, some of the other guys do. Although, I mean, again, it happened to him too. I watched all of his run defense film too, and he definitely had times, but there were many times where he saw it coming and spun off of it, and then would kind of come or just took it on properly, and then he would come around. So I'm worried about the tosses, not just the runs up the middle, because up the middle to an extent Q kind of hides some of the mistakes that other players might make, at least when he's on the field. But but on the outside, I mean, again, I guess if you run JJ's way, it's not the same thing. But there are definitely spots in the Jets defensive line that can be exploited in the run game.
Yeah, it's a thing where like, hey, Michael Carter is a good run defender, and that's a reason like they were able to run lighter personnel versus heavier boxes because Michael Carter is such a do-it-all guy. Sauce got a little bit more physical this year, so hopefully, I don't think he's ever gonna be a great run defender, a great tackler, but at least he was more willing this year. And then past that, like we know that even though Jordan Whitehead does not want to admit it, even though the film is out there, he was a terrible tackler. So Chuck Clark to him, that's a big upgrade in tackling. And then you're hoping Tony Adams in year 3, but like really his obviously like really his year 2 kind of. Hopefully he can improve a little bit as well because he was a little bit like bat out of hell sometimes coming down in the box. So you're hoping with the new additions of Clark and Tony Adams improving a little bit from year 1 to 2, but really 2 to 3. That the run defense will be a little bit better on the edges. Because you're right, like East and West, they got a little bit at times as well. But again, hopefully it's just less emphasized in general because teams have to pass the ball more. And then you put the ball into DJ Reed's, Sauce Gardner's, Michael Carter's hands, and hopefully they can create some turnovers, which is something we didn't really see last year because teams don't have to force any balls. Whereas if it's not there, throw it out of bounds, punt it because. Like we legitimately got excited if the Jets got near the 50-yard line. Like they got a first down and we're excited. Like we should see. Like what was that? There's a stat that came out the other day on Twitter, and it was like about like the last like decade of points scored, and the Jets were like 200 points behind the Giants. It's like they have been so abysmal on offense. And last year, just getting 7 wins with Tim Boyle and Zach Wilson. Like I still don't. Tim Boyle must have caught Roger Goodell doing something naughty and he has it on film, because I don't know how that guy's in the NFL. Like, he didn't even have more touchdowns than picks at a lower collegiate level. Like, how is he in the NFL? He was starting for us. You have Zach Wilson, who's one of the bigger busts of all time. It's like, it's just going to be such a nice change of pace. Like, snap 5 hours and be cheering. Like, we were cheering. There was a game last year, I think it was a Chargers game. We cheered for a roughing the passer call. Like, we've had nothing to cheer for on offense. So I'm just, again, hopefully it's less emphasized because the offense is actually scoring points. We don't have to worry about the run defense being a little bit, mediocre.
Yeah. Now I just wanted to get to this other one. So Allison, we appreciate it, but there's really no need to keep doing this. Like, I mean, just think, no, as much as we appreciate it, we're not telling you to throw away your life savings on Jets X Factor. So I like Aaron. I'm not an Aaron hater. I hope the story did not change. I'm a Jet player. When Aaron left those Packers and went to the Jets over any other team, I just got confused between quarterbacks, who's playing and who's not playing. I'm sorry. I'm having a hard time understanding this.
Yeah, it's always fun to try to break these down. Allison, I really just want to see what you're saying in terms of, you got to type it out. I think you're talking to texting. I hope the story did not change. I am a Jet player. I don't think you are. When Aaron left those Packers and over any other team, I just got confused between quarterbacks, who's playing and who's not playing. Who's playing and who's not playing at core? Like, Aaron Rodgers is playing, Tyrod is not. Clarify, Allison. You don't have to throw away your life savings on Jets X Factor, but I also can't control you. So if you're going to do it, hey, we appreciate it over here. So thank you, Allison.
Robbie said to put that in. So
there you go.
There's another one here too. I thought Aaron would be the quarterback to play the 49ers home team and not picking him over another quarterback and get them back for not picking him, and now taking it 49ers out. Okay, so you're talking about the 49ers not drafting him number 1 overall. So you thought Aaron would be. Are you saying that you're a 49ers fan? I'm trying to figure this out, because I thought Aaron would be the quarterback to play the 49ers home team, meaning I thought Rodgers would be the 49ers quarterback and not picking him over another quarterback, Alex Smith, and get them back for not picking him. So now he'll take it out on the 49ers for not picking him. Yeah, that's a common narrative whenever he plays San Francisco. That it was in the book. I read Ian O'Connor. I don't know if you saw it, but I read Ian O'Connor's book. I was bored on a weekend, so I read Ian O'Connor's book Out of the Darkness about Rodgers, cover to cover. And
wow, was
it was interesting. There were definitely parts of it that were a little more gossipy than I would necessarily appreciate, but it definitely gave a lot of insight into Rodgers. But one thing that was very clear is that Rodgers never forgave the 49ers for not taking him. But the thing is, we could talk about revenge all we want, but he's 0-2 against. I mean, I just looked at the stats since 2018, since Fred Warner's in there, because I wrote an article about that today. I mean, he's lost to them twice in the playoffs in the last few years, and that's really all that matters. He lost an NFC championship. He lost a divisional round. So, I mean, ultimately, it's not, he's had some good games against them too. I mean, he had a game he threw for over 400 yards. He had a game he threw for 4 touchdowns. But, I don't know if the revenge aspect will actually impact his play.
He's a guy who is revengeful. Like, there's a lot of guys, elite athletes, who almost make up stories to be elite. Kobe, Michael Jordan, a lot of these guys, Tom Brady would say he would look for things. I'm sure Aaron Rodgers has an arsenal, of things he could get motivated by. And if this is one of them, fine. Do I think he's gonna watch more film or anything like that this week versus another week because of it? No, probably not. But the revenge factor is there. Again, they skipped on him. It's his hometown team and all that. So apparently that's why he didn't consider them last year. I don't know if that's actually a thing or not. That's what a rumor that was floating around. So I would love to see him stick it to the 49ers. Now, if you're a 49ers fan, Allison, I'm sorry, but Jets are 49ers all day. So I hope he does stick it to them. But again, we do appreciate the super chats. Not necessary, but I appreciate it nonetheless.
Yeah. Okay. Now I had a few things, just other things I wanted to get to. Let's say, speaking of Rodgers, you watched his 2022 film, and realistically speaking, it didn't look like his arm fell off at all. It looked like a lot of it was bad receivers and things like that. But ultimately, he did throw 12 interceptions. Again, if you watch them, a few of them were definitely on the receiver, things like that. And he just didn't their offense wasn't as dynamic. Are you concerned now that he's coming off an Achilles tear? And I understand also that he had the broken thumb in 2022. I get it. And his numbers did fall off significantly after he broke his thumb. If you look at the first 5 weeks, he played a lot better than the rest of the season. Are you concerned, though, that with another year, right, he's getting older, and with the Achilles, you're not concerned about it at all, that his play is gonna fall off? I don't mean fall off a cliff, but I mean where he'll be, let's say somewhere between, I don't know, 16 to 20 as opposed to top 10.
How? Like I don't understand how, unless it's injuries. He still has his mind, right? He's always been good, changing formations or changing protections, or obviously with the hard count, getting guys to jump, and even just like 2 extra deep shots a game from Aaron Rodgers to Garrett Wilson, convert on one of those. It can change completely the complexion of the game. So, he didn't lose the arm. We know he still has the arm. We saw it in training camp. We saw it in the videos. He still has the mindset. He's less mobile than he was 10 years ago. Fine. But was he mobile and running for all those yards in MVP years? He wasn't. So is there maybe a slight fall off? Sure. But like mediocre, mid-level quarterback, I just don't see it. I really don't. I'm really expecting a top 5, 6, 7 quarterback, 8 quarterback in the league. Again, like nobody and again, like people talk about that year with Rodgers. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever been injured or like anything. Like you could stub your toe and then you're like, I don't know, I'm making a bad analogy here. You could like stub your toe is broken, and you wipe your ass, and you're like, oh my God, my toe hurts while I'm wiping my ass. How does that happen? Like, everything's connected. Now break your thumb and try to throw a 70-yard ball. Like it's hard when you break your thumb to throw a football. Like I'm not making any leaps here. Like it's being now on top of that. Throw in the fact that you have 2 starting rookie receivers in Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson, and they didn't really do anything at the beginning of the year. Christian Watson took off at the end, but like I wasn't impressed with those guys. His number 1 tight end that year was Robert Tonyan, who I don't know if he's on an NFL roster right now. Lazard was his other Lazard was his other receiver, who for the Jets this year, if everything works out, he's like receiver 5, and obviously initially he's going to be higher up, but if Gibson and Corley take off, he's receiver 5 for the Jets. At least in my mind, maybe not to Rodgers and stuff. He's probably be higher than that, but what I'm saying, 5th best receiver. So, and in that year, he had 26 touchdowns, 12 picks. And I think you brought this up on another stream. Maybe it was a stream that we were talking on, but like Mahomes in the regular season last year, what were his numbers? Like, why did nobody talk about Mahomes and how he struggled last year? And that's with Andy Reid, a Hall of Fame head coach, and Travis Kelce and the refs were clearly in his pocket, So like, it's a thing where I don't see the fall off coming that big for Rodgers. Again, maybe a little bit, but there's going to be some weeks in this season where Rodgers is the best quarterback in the NFL that week. With the talent he has, with the defense he has, I just can't see the fall off. Again, top 3, maybe not. Some weeks he will be, but there's no way he's not at the bare minimum a top 10 quarterback in the NFL this year. I really cannot see it. Minus again injuries. If they happen, I can't control that. But he's on the field. He's still a top 10 guy easily.
Yeah, I mean, there's just this idea. If you watch Peyton Manning in 2014, Peyton Manning first half of the year. Was just, putting up I haven't watched this film, but he was putting up the same stats. And then suddenly in the second half of the season, he like fell off a cliff. So are you concerned at all that could happen to Rodgers?
That his play can fall off a cliff? And you compared him to who? Sorry, who was the name you just said?
Peyton Manning.
Yeah, but like the thing was like Peyton, I guess, but like Peyton was throwing like ducks. Now I can't speak to him in practice, but like his arm fell off. But like he never had the arm talent, in my opinion, that Rodgers did. Like Rodgers is probably the best.
He said it.
Rodgers is the best thrower of football of all time. Like of all, and okay, maybe Mahomes will be up there. Josh Allen has some crazy arm talent, but like even in Peyton Manning's heyday, it was more because of his mind than it was because of his arm. Like he had a great deep ball and stuff like that. Like but he was never Rodgers in terms of the arm, and it's still there. So unless it falls off from August to October, like can it happen that quickly? Again, I'm not a sports scientist. I don't know how quickly your arm can fall off, but for right now, he's still throwing lasers. So you still have that, and you still have the again his mind on top of all this talent. He's going to be a stud. The Jets are going to be a great offense with him. So.
I actually heard someone say something very interesting this week. They were comparing Rodgers to Brett Favre. And they were saying Favre probably, if you put him in uniform, he probably could still throw a 50-yard bomb with no problem. The issue that happened to him was injuries caught up with him, meaning his arm never really fell off. He was just that tight. And so they were kind of saying that the same thing could happen to Rodgers, where his arm will never fall off, but just injuries will start taking over. And with the torn Achilles and the fact that he tried to come back ridiculously early on it, there is the possibility that it just kind of healed in a stretch position, and that he'd be more susceptible to other injuries.
Yeah, again, I can't control the injury thing. Like that is what it is. He's 40. He's taking hits from guys who are running full, 20 miles per hour at 280 pounds. It's not fun taking those hits. So again, that's something I can't control. But like mention it, like again, just like Peyton Manning, Tom Brady's arm didn't even sniff Rodgers' arm. Like Manning's arm was better than Brady's in my opinion. Now Brady obviously accurate, same thing with Peyton Manning, but Brady never had a great arm in my opinion. Like he was again accurate, but there was never a lot of power and stuff like that. So I can see it happening quicker for Brady. Again, just Rodgers just has a cannon attached to his shoulder, so it'll eventually drop off, but. I'm not concerned about the arm, and Hawk kind of said I'm concerned about the mobility. Yeah, but where was his mobility in 21 and 22? It wasn't really there either. So like if he lost a mile per hour or two, sure, whatever. But it's not like he was getting a bunch of rushing yards and rolling out of the pocket and all this stuff. Like he's doing a lot of it from the pocket. Now the thing you have to be concerned about the Achilles and again, I'm not a sports scientist, but I obviously do a lot of film and stuff. Like people say, oh, it's not the plant leg. You have to drive a lot off that back foot. So if anything, again, just me thinking off the cuff at the top of my head, I think it's probably more impactful he probably tore the worst Achilles, right? Because he tore his right Achilles.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, you have to drive off of that foot. Your plant leg, you obviously you have some bend to your knee and stuff. Like you're not like overextending that plant leg necessarily. So a lot of people mention that. But really, I think it's more concerning that it is that leg because you have to drive off of that to rotate.
I mean, and that's what he uses. Yeah. I mean, him in particular because of the way he throws the ball.
Yeah. So and a lot of people mention like, oh, it's not the plant leg, but I think people are kind of miscasting that. Like it's still a concern because that's where a lot of the power comes from that back leg. So we'll see if what happens. Now, I'm also I'm almost to the point now where like the football gods owe us a good year with like injuries and just a good football season. So like there's just no way it can happen again, right? Like at that point, I'll just walk outside and just God strike me by lightning because like at this point I'm just going to give up. Like we deserve the gods owe us a healthy Rodgers season, so he's going to be healthy. That's the way I'm thinking. I'm going to be positive. He's going to be completely healthy. Maybe a banged, maybe sprains his finger or his ankle one game or two, and Tyrod comes in and wins us the game, or goes 1-1, whatever it is. But Rodgers is going to be healthy because the big man upstairs owes me quite a bit.
Okay. Speaking of injuries, and so I wanted to ask you about Mike Williams because obviously Saleh said he's going to be available week 1, but he won't play full time. They're going to manage his workload. He said the way Saleh said it is he'll be available enough to make an impact, but he won't be out there on every play. And so Williams, he was never a big separation guy, never really had much speed. His whole craft is contested catches. Do you see his ACL tear affecting that, especially now that he's 30?
Yeah, it has to at least a little bit, right? Because like the thing about Mike Williams, he's like obviously deep ball guy, back shoulder guy. I don't think it'll affect the back shoulder as much. Like it'll affect maybe his jumping ability a little bit, so it could affect it there a little bit as well. The thing about Mike Williams is though, like for his size, he's actually a little bit of an underrated athlete, like getting vertical. When I did a breakdown, I was actually quite impressed by like his acceleration and his top speed. So it'll affect him a little bit. But I still think that the main reason he's brought in here is to be a contested catch guy. Obviously vertical, he'll still win some balls, but I see his main role being the fact that, hey, Rodgers is in trouble, throw it up back shoulder, red zone guy. And that's not so much. That's more like body control and hands and almost just like an innate ability to catch stuff. Like, and I compared him to my buddy Vinny, who goes to the games with me. Like the most on that, like he looks so unathletic and he moves so weird, but when he plays basketball, the shots go in. When he plays football, he catches the ball. He just does it. Like, it's just weird how he does it. And Mike Williams is almost one of those guys where like his technique's not always good, but he catches the ball. And it's not a 1 year, 2 year thing. Like he's been one of the better contested catch guys for the last, how long he's been in the league, 6-7 years, whatever it's been. Yeah. So, yeah, I see that being his main role, and yeah, it's Achilles, isn't it? Or he tore his ACL, his ACL, right?
ACL.
Yeah, so his ACL will affect him a little bit. But even if like he's like a downgraded Mike Williams, he's so much better than what we had last year. Like I think a healthy Mike Williams is an upper tier number 2 receiver. Maybe this year, because of the injury, he's a mid-level number 2. That's still excellent compared to what we had last year. Like Lazard was our 1 in some games, and Gibson and a bunch of like UDFAs and whoever else was running around out there. So even a downgraded Mike Williams for the price they got him at is still a really good player to add to this offense. So I'm not overly concerned. Again, unless he gets injured again, I cannot control injuries. But if he's healthy, I think he'll be pretty effective.
I mean, I think that's where the lack of belief in the Jets comes from. If you watch any, unfortunately, I've been saddled with watching a lot of these preview videos looking for some things to write about. And if you watch anyone who doesn't believe in the Jets, the reason that they don't, other than the same old Jets, which a lot of them obviously say, is injuries to Rodgers, Tyron Smith, and Mike Williams. I mean, and AVT to an extent. Those are the guys. And the problem is that all of them have injury histories. And so, you could say you can't control them, but the thing is the likelihood of them getting hurt is pretty high, especially Tyron, right? But Williams is always dinged up. And, AVT is a little different, but again, post Achilles, you don't know what to expect. And so is it unreasonable to think that all 4 of those guys can miss multiple games this season?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, like you could factor in injuries and those guys and like missing some games, but the great part about it is like the Jets have like legit depth on this team, wherever it may be, like any spot you really look at, and maybe minus receiver. I don't love the receiver depth, but in other spots they have great depth. And if they do have an injury or two, I think this offense, this defense, like they have enough talent that they can kind of manage it. Like, okay, Mike Williams is injured for a game or two. You have guys, you have Corley, maybe his role is a little bit, it's a little bit expanded in that game. You have a great running game. You have Conklin, who's a top 10 tight end in terms of receiving guards. And again, a lot of people, it's like, it's fantasy football stuff. Like, oh, he's a guy who's always available on the waiver wire. Like he's a free agent all the time. He must suck. It's like, yeah, because the Jets can't sniff the red zone because of their quarterbacks. So like, Aaron Rodgers this year, he probably gets 5, 6, 7 touchdowns and is a viable tight end. So like even if they do encounter some injuries, I think they have enough talent elsewhere to be able to manage it, and that's why depth is important. Some people in here are saying that to clarify that it's his left Achilles and all that stuff. I thought we did. I was saying that I'd rather have it be his left Achilles than his right Achilles. So maybe I misworded it, guys, people in the chat, but I think people were saying that it's not his plant leg.
He actually, he tore his left Achilles, meaning the left foot. That at least I just Googled that. I thought it was the right one, but I'm a lefty, so it's hard for me to switch the sides and think about which foot he's. Yeah, but so it's not his back leg. It is his plant leg that he right? Because if you're throwing from the right, your back leg is your right leg, right? And so it is the plant leg. So actually the plant, then according to what you were saying, that's not as bad as the back foot.
So it was his. I don't want to watch replay
now.
Yeah,
makes sense. Now that I'm thinking about it, it was his left leg that was sticking. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So that's what I thought. I thought it was his left leg. If I jumbled up my words, I apologize. I thought it was his left leg, so I thought it was his right leg, because a lot of people say, oh, it's not his plant leg. It's better that it's his plant leg versus back leg. Versus right leg. So if it is his left leg, I'm gonna have to go watch a freaking injury again, which sucks. But
I just Googled it and it said left leg. Yeah.
Okay. So the left is better than the right. That's my point, because maybe I saw it on Twitter. I don't know if I was listening to a podcast. People were saying like, oh, it's not his plant leg, so like it's better. I'd rather have it be the plant leg, because you don't explode off of that leg. Like, so the explosion part is where you tear it again. It's not the plant. Like you're adding weight to it, but you don't tear an Achilles because of weight. You add it because of like explosive overextension. So yeah, it's better that it's his left leg. I'm sorry that we got that all jumbled up, but good.
Yeah. Okay. Now I wanted to get to the chat. Just so you know, I think members get priority, and now that we have our YouTube membership, members get priority in the chat. So if you want to get your chat, let's say, put to the front of the line, become a JetX YouTube member. And so I think that the people who are in green, right, are members, right? The green over here. Fine. So Connor, thanks for joining us. He said Joe freaking Blewett and Rico gosh darn Boord. We know where you're getting that one from. 2 of the best in the business. Thanks so much for being here, Connor. So we have Snowball. Thanks for joining us. Hey, Joe and Rivka, I'm not convinced Reddick will play this year. What do you think about that, Joe?
He's not convinced Reddick will play this year. Well, does that mean he's? It would mean more if he said, "I'm convinced Reddick." I'm not. Okay.
He's not convinced Reddick will not play this year, but he's not convinced he will. Meaning he thinks Reddick may not.
Yeah. The thing about it is, like, when you're thinking about the situation, like, taking it from a place of logic, you'd say that he would be here, right? Because the contract tolls over. He'd just be a Jet last year, or sorry, next year. But his team hasn't been thinking with logic so far. So what's the thing they get hit with logic? Now maybe it's like the $800,000 or $750, whatever it is, game checks that he's gonna be missing. But I'll never understand the hold out versus hold in. Again, just go to practice and say you have a headache every day, you have migraines, and you can't practice. You're not losing those millions of dollars. Now, I believe he's close to about $5 million in fines. I think the Jets can like rescind or basically take away like $2 to $3 million of that. But like there's about $2 million that he's fined no matter what. So I'm sure if let's just say it's $3 million they can give back. So if he comes back to the Jets, I'm sure we'll give you the $3 million back. That's part of the negotiation. Maybe they again guarantee the contract and add a few $1 million on of money to it, but I don't see it getting anywhere above, like, he's making like 14, right? Base, something like that. I can't see it being anything above like 17, 18, maybe like the top, a couple of million on top of it, because they need that money to bring in Devontae, or whoever else at the trade deadline. And like a lot of people compare it to Daniel Hunter, and I'm sure we've recapped this on the site. It's different. Daniel Hunter was a free agent. Reddick is not a free agent, so it's a different situation. Judon's a different situation as well. Like, okay, everybody's like, oh, well, he didn't sign a contract when he got there. He wasn't holding out. He was upset with the contract, but he was never holding out. So different situations. But with Reddick, yeah, I do think he comes back Monday or Tuesday. I do. That's me thinking logically, though, and they seem a little bit stupid. So, like, I'm not sure it happens. I'm with you, Snowball. Like, I'm not convinced either, but my gut says he comes back. And even if it's not this week, it's within this week or next week. I can't see him missing anything past week one. Maybe week one, make a statement. The Jets lose. Now they need Reddick. Like, maybe that's their last ditch effort. But like the trade request was like a last ditch effort, in my opinion, as well. Now he's putting up videos of him practicing, like, or to make pressure on the Jets, because our Jets fans gonna like clamor over him swiping at medicine balls. Like, I don't know.
Probably to show other teams that he's still keeping in shape because he asked for a trade.
It could be that. It could be the fact that like now people are commenting like, oh, tag the Jets, sign this guy, we need him. Like, whatever it is. Again, it's just another desperate kind of shot in the dark. I think at this point. So I think they're getting desperate. Again, they both need each other, but Reddick needs the Jets more than the Jets necessarily need him, because he just will be a Jet next year if you don't want to play, or just don't make your money. Like, you're complaining about money and you're just throwing it down the toilet at this point. So come back and ball out. Let the Jets give you a guaranteed contract, a few extra million, and then make your money, next year. Have a 12 sack, 13, 15, 25, 30 sack season. I wish for it, and then get your money elsewhere, but it's not going to happen with the Jets. You're not getting $25 million. There's absolutely no way.
Yeah, so this is my take on Reddick. There are a few things that I've kind of changed my tune on. The one mistake, besides not working out the contract before they traded for him, obviously that was a big mistake. I don't know what Douglas was thinking. But I think even since they came here, insisting that Reddick comes into the building before they negotiate is a little tacky, only because, like, you can't just talk to his agents and say, walk in the building and we'll guarantee your deal. Like, at least that, like, or just say, like, come on, we'll give you the guaranteed money, get back to practice, and then we'll talk about everything else. Like, just this constant stance, we're not even going to talk to him until he comes, is a little bit much, I think. And just kind of, I don't think it's 100% necessary. I think that may have also, like, caused the real dig in. Like, whereas if he had said, okay, we'll guarantee your money and then we'll continue negotiating, Reddick might have at least shown up to hold in instead of hold out. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's just that dug in and insistent. I thought that was a little dumb.
Yeah, I guess it kind of depends on like what their initial conversations were, and we'll never know, right? Like, I wish it could be a fly on the wall, but like, did he tell the Jets? Because they're both putting out their own side of it, right? Like, the Reddick camp is saying that we were believed to be negotiating as soon as we got traded for. The Jets were saying, hey, you got to come practice and then we'll negotiate. We don't know. Like, they're both saying their side of it. So I still do think it's a little bit foolish to trade for a guy who's sitting out for his hometown team, who he loves playing for, and not have a contract kind of in hand and ready now. But part of that the fact that, like, hey, Joe Douglas for a third round pick in 2-3 years is willing to take that risk. And like the benefit of it is like, okay, again, it's a pick in the future. You have a top flight edge rusher on a cheap contract, and like I'm willing to take the risk even if it blows up in my face a little bit. Like that's part of the thinking probably as well. But yeah, at this point, like it just needs to be resolved. Like let's, like season's right around the corner, vibes are high. Let's get one of the better edge rushers in the league and add it to an elite defense to become even a more elite defense. But again, I think people saying like, oh, we don't need Reddick. I think that's also crazy at the same time. Like again, is it possible for them to win a Super Bowl without him? Sure. Does having a top flight edge rusher greaten your chances? Definitely does.
Yeah. The other thing about I don't think he's going to play week 1. I mean, look, it would be a pleasant surprise to me. I really don't think so. In fact, I'm not sure. I could very well see him sitting out till week 11, showing up week 11, basically saying, I have a headache or whatever you said, sitting out the rest of the season, but being there so he gets paid, and then he gets accrues the season, 6 games you need, and then he goes to the free agent market next year. Could totally see that happening.
Yeah, but then at that point, like he's also hurting himself with future. So not only are you hurting yourself again, logically, I don't think they're very logical at times. So maybe you're right. But at that point, you're missing how many millions of dollars from missing those games? And then are you even going to be able to make up that money next year? Because teams are not going to be as willing to give you a big contract if you're pulling this crap, and he's going to be a year older with less. He's proven less at that point, right? Because he's only had 6 games instead of him balling out for 17 to 20 games with the Jets. So like he could do that, but he's then going to hurt his pockets this year and next year. So he's like really doubling down on stupid here. If he does that, it is what it is. But listen, like at the end of the day, if he comes by week 11, he's going to be rested. He has to ball out to get a contract, and we need him for the playoffs. I don't think we need him to make the playoffs. So if that's what happens, that's what happens. But it's a really stupid move because again, you're hurt and in the future, undoubtedly.
Now, the one thing I have heard some people say that the way I see it is teams would not want to give him the deal he wants if he sat out a year or almost a year. I have heard people say that that's not true, and some team will pay Reddick what he wants next year because he's just that good of an edge rusher, and they won't care.
Why did they trade for him? If that's the case,
well, that's my question. My big thing, I think that the crux of this situation is likely that Joe Douglas knew that no other team was going to trade for Reddick and give him what he wants. So he traded him and said, okay, I'll be the one to take him and not give him what he wants. Whereas Reddick looks at it and say, well, you traded for me. You have to get me what I wanted. And Douglas is like, well, no one else is giving you what you want. So we're just taking you because the Eagles, what happens is I think what's going to happen is if the Eagles couldn't trade him, they were going to cut him. I don't think they couldn't carry his contract and Huff. So I think they were just going to release him outright. And because his money wasn't guaranteed, so they would have just gotten rid of that. They would have taken the same dead cap hit, and obviously they wouldn't have gotten anything for him. But I think if they really had no suitors, they would have cut him. The Eagles are like, okay, we don't have anyone who will trade for him and give him what he wants. The Jets are willing to give us a 3rd round pick. We'll trade him. And, the only thing the Jets probably maybe should have done was waited a little bit longer to kind of show him, like, hey, no one's willing to trade for you. And then kind of come in and said, because they still had JFM at that point. So they didn't 100%. I mean, like, obviously JFM and Reddick are not comparable as edge rushers, but JFM is still a viable starting edge rusher. And so, if from that sense, if they had waited longer, they waited till after the draft, whatever, Reddick at that point would have even less leverage because it'd be like, well, you had a lot of time and absolutely no one traded for you. And so at that point, it'd be like, okay, just come in and play on your deal or the Eagles are going to cut you. Which maybe cutting him would have been an ideal scenario for him in a way, because then he could have negotiated his own contract and maybe he would have gotten more money, but maybe not, because teams might have said it would have been after the first wave of free agency, and teams might have said, look, we're already set. We're not giving you the amount of money that you want. Who knows?
Yeah. Again, it's a thing where, like, in my ideal world, if I'm Joe Douglas, I'm agreeing to the contract before the trade. But how much did he lie to the Jets? Like, did he say that he was willing to play? Were they close? Like, hey, the Jets offered 18, he denied it, and they're like, okay, like maybe we could work with like a little bit more guarantees, some incentives, maybe we'll get you up to 20. or was it a thing where like right off the jump, he was like, hey, no, I want 25. And I'm not playing for anything less than 25. Then the Jets just say, okay, well, adios. We'll see you later. Like what were the conversations? We'll never know. But in my ideal world, before you trade for a player who's holding out from his hometown team, you get the contract done. But again, we don't know what happened in terms of what was said behind the scenes. So, and maybe we'll know like a tell-all book from Hassan Reddick in in 5-10 years once he's retired or something like that. But yeah, it's not a great look. And again, he's one of the better edge rushers in the league. We need to suit him up.
What I think happened, and I keep saying this, is when the Jets traded for Reddick, they had JFM. Reddick was going to be more of like a 50% snap guy. And so I think he may have given them a verbal agreement that he would play on his contract. Once they traded JFM, he's like, well, now I have leverage because they need me. And so then he went back on his word. I think that may have happened.
And it's another thing too, like there could be another aspect of this where at the end of the day, if he does report to Jets camp and they just give him $14 million guaranteed and we have to go through all this egg in our face and stuff. But at the end of the day, Reddick ends up playing for the Jets, motivated to get another contract on $14 million, $15 million contract. Then he played it really well. Like it's a risky play. And now with the C, obviously, the common saying, bold strategy, Cotton. We'll see how that works out for you. Now, if it works out for him, great. And then we have that $6 million to spend on Devontae Adams, who's only going to cost us $6 to $8 million, whatever that contract is going to be. So it's really risky what he's doing. If it works out, he'll look great, but still a little bit riskier than I like to be at that point.
Especially in an all-in season.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I don't think the vibes were like killed or anything like that because they haven't played with him, all that stuff. But at the end of the day, players know how good he is. Like I'm sure they want him here as well. Like they could say, oh, we don't really care. We have the guys next man up. It's kind of bullshit. Like Reddick is better than this point than McDonald and Clemens and Eric Watts. So I'm sure the players want him here as well.
Absolutely. Now, Snowball says, seems like a lot of our pressure may come up the middle. Anyway, was probably referring to what I was saying about the edge rush not being as good without Reddick. I mean, that's when Quinn is on the field, first of all. Second of all, Quinn can't do it all on his own. I mean, again, he had a 15% pressure rate last year, which was second among interior defensive linemen, but 15% means 15 out of every 100 snaps, right? That means that there's still 85 other snaps where they need someone else to win. Not just him, plus pressure that comes from multiple places makes him more likely to get a sack, makes him more likely that the quarterback will actually be hurried. Whereas when the pressure comes from one place, the quarterback can very often step up, step around, things like that. So don't underestimate that or think that the Jets don't need an edge rush just because they have Q in the middle.
Yeah, no, you need to have the edge rushers to pinch the pocket as well. And if they were going to try to roll out, they obviously they reestablished the line of scrimmage. They push past their guy and they step right into him. That's how JJ got quite a few sacks last year. But having Reddick and Q is like a force multiplier because he'll beat his guy cleanly as well. And if he tries to step up from Reddick, then Q is there. And if he tries to slip out of the pocket, then Reddick's there. Like Reddick and Q will be a great like rushing combo. And obviously him and Huff were last year as well. But yeah, a lot of the pressure does come up from the middle, but you still need that edge rusher, right? Like it's not going to hurt us to have a top 5 pass rusher. I don't think he's a top 5 D end. Different conversation, but as a pass rusher, he's a top 5 to at minimum 10 guy. So undoubtedly, however you want to phrase it, it's going to help the Jets to have him. We're talking about base personnel now, having Michael Clemens on the field instead of Reddick. It makes a difference.
Absolutely. Now I know I'm going through the chat. I'm trying to find the members. I saw that there was some back and forth in the chat. That's why we may have not have understood Allison's comments. Because I think it looked like someone was having a back and forth. I'm not going to read those comments because it looked like it was a sidebar. So, Christian, that deep ball to Garrett in practice was insane. You're talking about the joint practice. The one thing that bothered me a little bit about that throw was that Robbie said it was slightly underthrown. So Garrett kind of had to armbar, the defender or keep the arm out to make sure that he can catch it. I know that that's a nitpick because ultimately it was caught. But I guess what would have made me fully happy was to see him hit him in stride, wide open touchdown without any of that.
Yeah. It's a thing where like I watched the one Jets drive thing. It seems like it was predetermined where he's like, hey, beat your guy deep. So it's also about when you release the ball too. Like if he released the ball really early into his drop, he had to put a lot of air under it. because it's harder to obviously judge when the guy has to run 30 yards to catch up to your ball than if you're putting on a laser and he only has to run 10, 15 yards. So it kind of depends on exactly when he threw that ball. If it was really early in the rep, I'm not going to get on him as much for floating it. If it were the thing where, hey, he beat his guy, then he floats it. Okay, that's a little bit more concerning. But based on what I saw on social media and through the Jets, show that they put out, I think it was more predetermined, and he just launched it up there as soon as the ball was snapped, and that's why it floated so much. So that kind of is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, obviously, 55-yard touchdown against the Giants. Can't ask for much more than that. So
yeah, we can't complete slants. Now we're talking about deep balls being a little bit too hung up there. We'll survive. It'll be
exactly. Jaden said, "I'm worried about his confidence to run. Tried to escape the pocket when he got hurt." So this is something I was going to bring up with you. Rodgers may never have been a big runner, but something, and I actually was rewatching a video last night from Alex Rollins, who does YouTube film breakdown, and what he was saying is Rodgers didn't throw over the middle a lot in his last few years in Green Bay, and he was talking about why. But one thing he said basically because he doesn't want to turn the ball over, and in the middle of the field, especially if you're not on the same page as your receiver, that's where the turnovers very often happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so he said if he doesn't see what he likes, he would rather just run out of the pocket and try to make a play rather than trying to force in and out, a ball into a tight window where it might be picked. And so if that's the case, it looked from that joint practice, you saw that one where he ran out and then he ran out of bounds and he's like a 1 yard gain. That's what he does, Rodgers. He likes to get out of the pocket. That's what he did on those two plays, the one he got hurt on and the one before, where he ran out, he kind of ran out of the pocket to make a play. And so I feel like he's still going to try to do that. And more than being worried that he'll be able to do it, I'm worried that he'll get injured trying to do it. Kind of like he did last year where he got hit. He's trying to run out of the pocket. He gets hit from an awkward angle, and that's what happened. Whereas if he had kind of tucked it, he probably would have been fine.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, you have to be concerned with him because he will roll out and take those deep shots and stuff like that if he doesn't see what he likes over the middle. So again, that's an injury thing I can't necessarily I can't control. The thing with that is, though, like in terms of Rodgers and being able to play like in structure and all that stuff and over the middle and all of that, like you have a bunch of guys who should be able to win pretty quickly. Where Rodgers is going to be able to release the ball quickly and not have to get roll out. Like I think the Jets are going to kind of account for that. You have Corley to play the role where design touches. You have Garrett Wilson can win quickly over the middle. You have Conklin, who you line him up versus a linebacker over the middle, he'll win. So I also think it has to do with talent and what he had. Did he have guys in Green Bay who he was confident in winning over the middle? You also have to have a lot of confidence to throw a dig in a certain window in the NFL level. But if you don't have that confidence in Christian Watson or Dobbs or Romeo Dobbs getting there, he's not going to throw that ball. Now, if that was Garrett Wilson, Tyler Conklin, Breece Hall, that stuff, is he going to throw more over the middle? Probably, because he has more confidence in those guys. So I don't think it's just a thing where he won't do it. You have to have confidence in your guys as well, and he should have more confidence in these players with the Jets. So I think he will throw more over the middle this year. And again, like if Garrett's not getting open right away, then Mike Williams or Conklin should be. So like it's a thing where I don't think he's going to have to try to make a bunch of plays with his legs and stuff like that. And listen, he probably knows that as well. And he said that he feels good rolling out. This offense is not going to need to put up a bunch of points. So if you feel like you're compromised, throw the ball away, live to play another down. Like, it's okay. Punt the freaking ball. The defense will stop. You get the ball back. Like, he doesn't need to force anything with his Jets team.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Jaden, I want to let you know I'm not ignoring your stuff. It's just some of the things that you said I think we already addressed. She said you need to jump talking about Mike Williams and the ACL, but I think you already addressed that, and you said basically he might be a little bit compromised, but ultimately he still has that contested catch ability.
It's more about size and boxing guys out and eye-hand coordination. Like, yeah, you want the leaping ability, obviously, but if it's 80% of what it was, he's still so good at it that he'll still be very, very fine. Like, obviously, yes, you need knees to jump, he needs hands to catch. Like, yes, that's obvious.
He said about Reddick, he said he plays like week 5, in my opinion. I said week 6, so the same thing. He said people get hurt and we have to get a deal done. Well, Reddick, to an extent, that's why I don't think he's going to play week 1. I think he for sure, the way he sees it is, I'm not going to play week 1. It's their toughest team. They don't have a pass rush. They're going to get desperate to pay me. The same thing happens if someone gets hurt. I mean, God forbid if JJ gets hurt, I mean, then they're absolutely desperate to get him in the building.
Knock on wood, Rivka.
So, yeah. Not something I generally do, but yeah, it's again, Reddick, that's his incentive for holding out. He thinks he's going to get the money he wants when the Jets get stuck. So.
But again, like even if they lose that first game, they shouldn't lose any of the next four. So you're 4-1 at that point, and you just gave up what is it, like 800,000, whatever it is. So you just gave up $4 million for that hope. Like it's just so stupid. I think his agent gave him bad advice in terms of, again, I know Jaden's a little bit different in terms of like the contract and all that stuff, whatever. But the hold-in versus hold-out thing never makes sense. Like you gave up $2 million for absolutely nothing. Just be at practice. And if anything, being at practice and not practicing almost creates more of a distraction than you not being there. So if you wanted to create some chaos, be at practice, not participating. You have to, reporters are asking questions and people are taking videos and all this stuff when you're out in Japan and Tokyo or whatever the hell he is. Like you're kind of an afterthought at that point. So from that aspect, if I was an agent, I would say, hey, show up. It'll be more of a distraction, and just say you have headaches or you hurt your ankle or whatever. The holdout thing, just giving money back when you're arguing over a few $1 million to give $2 million away is just a bad business model. So
absolutely. And then he's talking about Danielle Hunter. He said Hunter's also better. I mean, I agree with that. I think Hunter's a better player. I think he's a more well-rounded pass rusher than Reddick is. His main issue over the years has been off the field stuff. But yeah, ultimately Hunter was a free agent, so he could ask for whatever he wants. It happens to be Hunter over his last 4 healthy seasons has a few, I think 1 or 2 more sacks than Reddick does, and then he's also coming off of, I think, a 15.5 sack season, whereas Reddick's coming off the 11 sacks. So if all you care about is sacks, Hunter deserves more money. But yeah, I mean, it's not the same situation because he wasn't a free agent. Now, as far as Judon is, he said Judon's older. Judon is 32, whereas Reddick is just turning 30 in a couple of weeks. The difference with Judon is that it's interesting that he's getting literally less than half the money that Reddick is. He's getting $6.5 million this year. So I'm very surprised that he was willing to play on that, even for the Falcons, because that's really chump change. I mean, for a guy who's been what he is, I understand that he got hurt after 4 games last year, but still, he's not just a good pass rusher. He's a very good run defender. He's really a complete player. I was surprised that Judon, but he kind of went out of his way to stick it to Reddick when he explained why he was going to play. He's like, look, I don't, this team doesn't owe me anything. They've never seen me play, blah, blah, blah. Like all these things, like basically saying, look what I'm doing, and Hassan Reddick will not report to his team.
Yeah, not the best example for Reddick, but it's a thing where like I can't blame guys for getting their money. And a lot of people are like, oh well, you're talking about like I work a job. It's just crazy. People try to compare it to like their normal lives. Like, oh well, I work a job and I only make $20 an hour. Like I would love $1 million. Yeah, but you're not in that situation. Like realistically, you are where you are, and he is where he is. You're talking about 15 million versus $20 million. Like most likely, this is setting him up and his kids for the next 60 years of their life. So I'm not going to try to get in guys' pockets. Like, if you want more money, get more money. A lot of people think it's just like, hey, if I was playing in the NFL, well, you're not. And, like people, oh, well, I want to play for the Jets. Like, they're my favorite team. Again, completely different. Like, he's trying to set up his family for the future. So I can't necessarily blame him for wanting more money because he is underpaid. Judon's definitely underpaid for what he is. But again, it's different because he was not holding out with the Pats. He was just unhappy about it. So I'm sure he's not happy he's making $6.5 million, but he's maybe a little bit more of a high character guy. And he understands that he's going to prove it, and he'll get a solid contract next year. And he's comfortable in his financial situation where, again, Reddick is not, but I'm not going to try to get into the guy's pockets.
Absolutely. So you said everyone knew he wanted a bag. You traded to give him a bag. I see it a little bit differently. I see it as if you're not willing to give him a bag, don't trade for him. That I don't see it as trade for him and give him a bag. The way I see it is Joe Douglas didn't want to give him a bag. Either you work it out with him so he doesn't get the bag he wants, or you don't trade for him. Like, you don't make that trade if you haven't worked out the contract. So I've heard people say that they think Douglas gave him a very insulting offer. Like, he really gave him a lowball offer, and Reddick said no. And that would be very like JD from what we understand. I mean, look at it. Why did he get Tyron Smith? Why did he get Mike Williams this offseason? Because both of them came well below what their market should have been because of their injuries. And so he kind of thought that he could do the same thing with Reddick because he's already underpaid. So he was like, I'll lowball him and he'll take it because he's stuck. This is his contract and it'll be all right. You can't do that. If he said no to your contract offer, you need to actually have that agreement or you don't make the trade. Like, it just that's the part that just doesn't make sense to me. Like you're saying, you trade and give him a bag. JD was never going to give him a bag. From what I can tell, I don't even, honestly, from what I can tell, it could be Woody Johnson never even gave him permission to give him a bag. That's the thing also. Like, he didn't sign anyone to long-term contracts this offseason, even Michael Carter, who I think he should have. Or no one signed to big deals this offseason. Everyone signed incentive-related deals, one-year deals, things like that. And so he wasn't going to give Reddick that money. It's not. So you're saying now he doesn't want to be here and will have to overpay. I don't think they'll have to overpay more than they would have before they traded for him. I think it's just the problem is they were never willing to give him the money that he wanted, but they traded for him. Yeah. So now they're just hoping that he'll come back. That was very dumb.
It's just a jumbled mess that I wish I could never have to talk about again. He just signs tomorrow. I wipe my hands clean of it. He gets a bunch of sacks. He leaves the Jets. He's not going to be here past this year. It's definitely an odd situation, but hopefully at the end of the day he's here week 1, and we'll never know what happened behind the scenes. Again, if they offered 16 and he's like, I want a little bit more, it's close to what I want, and then JFM left, they traded for him, he said no, I want 25, and that's in bad faith by him. But at the same point, with the guy who's holding out, you want to have that deal in place. But again, if Joe Douglas is going to be bold and he plays for $14 million this year and he gets you 15 sacks, then hey, the strategy worked out.
I mean, it's just, as a fan, it's really frustrating because it's like the Jets, it's yet another thing that makes them look like the clown in the media. And it's really frustrating from that end. Like, it's a stupid thing to do as a GM. And then, as Jaden said, we've dealt in complete bad faith. It's hard to say that for sure, although it certainly does seem that there was, even if Joe Douglas didn't promise him anything, just, again, making that trade when the player wants a new deal and not giving that new deal is a certain level of bad faith. It's a stupid play. Again, if it works out, great in retrospect, but it's definitely not a smart thing to do when you're all in.
Yeah, no, for sure. Again, and I'm hoping this is the last conversation we ever have about it. I with the Reddick stuff, I just can't. It's just it's getting so old at this point. It's been 3 months of the same kind of stuff, but now it's kind of we're getting to the point where it's more of a hard deadline because now we're talking about actual games. So he reports on Monday. We never talk about it again.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm just not very confident that that's going to happen.
Me neither. But here's the hope.
Yeah. Now, I have one other question. I think I may have asked you this on Slack or something like that. This is just a question I had. The Jets are playing better receivers than they had in previous years. If you look at the receivers they played last year, I get that they played Miami's group, but they struggled tremendously against Miami's. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, 3 games combined between the two of them, because Tyreek missed the second game, 300-yard games. They combined for like 342 yards and 3 touchdowns against the Jets in the 2 games in the 2 games last year. And again, Hill missed the second game, so that's 342 yards in essentially three players' games. They play Justin Jefferson. If you recall, in 2022, Kirk Cousins had a terrible game against the Jets, but JJ really stuck it to Sauce and DJ Reed. They had a really hard time against him. He was open all game. They play some other. Who else do they play this year? Now they play Ayuk week 1. I know Ayuk is not Justin Jefferson, but nonetheless, he still, had one of the most efficient, I think the most efficient season by any receiver in NFL history last year. You play, I'm trying to think who else they play. Not the early part of the season. Buffalo obviously doesn't have its receivers. I think I wrote it down here, actually.
Treylon Burks and the Titans week 2.
Well, they have DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley, but I don't know, Marvin Harrison Jr., I know he's a rookie, but obviously very high expectations for him. Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. Again, Kupp is the kind of guy that the Jets tend to struggle against at times, like, the little shifty guy who can just, turn on a dime and the Jets, the corners open a little bit too early. They play the Texans with all with their big 3 receivers. Are you at all concerned that the Jets cornerbacks, with whatever technique and perfections they may have, will struggle more against this year than they did in the last couple of seasons?
Not necessarily, because I don't know, they're good. They're obviously great corners. Like, Sauce is a top 3 guy. DJ Reed's one of the better number 2s that you're gonna see. And I think, in terms of the stats and these receivers getting yards against them, it's, in my opinion, and maybe stats will tell a different story, but in the NFL, the top receivers are going to get theirs, because that's what the NFL is nowadays. You can't hold past 5 yards, and they're so receiver friendly and offense friendly, that no matter how good your corners are, like the receivers are going to get theirs. It's just kind of about limiting the damage and damage control. So yeah, like Tyreek Hill's going to get his. He's a top 5 receiver in the NFL. Justin Jefferson was open that game. Sauce was a rookie, but he's going to get his. He's making $35 million for a reason. But if you could limit them, then that's like good enough. Like if you talk about Justin Jefferson getting 80, 90 yards, like that's probably a win if you're playing him. So it's about how bad really getting beat, and I just don't see these corners getting like beat up. They're going to give up their yards. DJ Reed will give up yards, especially like you said, route runners, Cooper Kupp and stuff like that. Like he opens his hips up too early, he'll get beat on digs and slants and outs and things like that. So like, yeah, you're obviously concerned about like the fact that they'll play better receivers, but the Jets corners are so good that I don't think it's something to be like concerned, like truly concerned about. The NFL nowadays, people are going to get theirs.
I mean, I guess it's just Miami is what really worries me. Because again, the Jets I get that the offense was terrible in those games, but ultimately losing 30-0 and 34-13. I get one of them was a pick, part of it was a pick six, but still 34 points. Again, like the Jets and DJ Reed, I mean, Jalen Waddle cooked him for a 51-yard touchdown or longer, maybe even longer than that. I guess my big concern is how do they play Miami this year? Like, Buffalo, we know that the Jets are going to probably play them tight. Whether they end up pulling out both, whether it's 1-1 chances or they're not going to lose both games to Buffalo. But Miami is the one that I'm like, you got to at least split with them. And it just seems like a bad matchup for the Jets.
Yeah. Miami has been tough for the Jets. Their offense is just so damn explosive, and part of it's again like tackling. And I don't think they have had the best tacklers in the secondary over the last few years. And it's like almost like damn if you do, damn if you don't against the Dolphins, because if you press them, like, yeah, you disrupt their routes and all that stuff. I think that's probably the best way. Like, you got to play a little bit aggressive against them, press them, don't let them get in space and all those rub routes and stuff like that. Like, kind of play them a little bit more aggressively and force Tua to get to his second, third read, because that's when he starts to struggle. Their offense is, 3-step drop ball out, 3-step drop ball out, 1-2 reads. Like, if you can cloud the reads up a little bit, throw some robbers, throw some guys over the middle, bracket guys, cap guys, whatever it may be. Like, I think you kind of have to get in their face a little bit. Now, that is risky because you press Tyreek Hill, you could be in trouble there. But the Jets tend to be a little more conservative, and this offense gets the ball out so quick that them playing off and playing more conservative lets them get the ball, and then turns into a yak game. And that's what Miami is all about. So to me, it's you got to get in their face and play a little bit more risky, force Tua to get to his second or third read. And like, it is what it is. Like, gotta hit him, like disrupt him. So, and it's beneficial, obviously. Like, hey, they're playing in Miami in December, and then they're playing, is that week 18 with the Dolphins? So they're playing here in January. So
I think, yeah.
We know Tua's stats when it's 44 degrees or lower out, and he sucks in it. So I think being physical and kind of you have to bully the Dolphins a little bit. Like, you can't play into their hands and try to be conservative, because that's kind of what they want. You got to be the bully against them.
Yeah. I mean, I hear it. I think playing soft against them is definitely a mistake. The one thing that always bothers me is that their offensive line is terrible, and yet it doesn't even seem to matter. At least this past
3-step drop ball out. That's why you got to force them to get to a second and third read.
I mean, because you watch it, like, it's so funny. Robert Hunt got $20 million from a year from Carolina, but if you look at his stats were only good because Miami got the ball out right away. Like, I forgot what it was. There was a graph someone put out correlating the difficulty of assignment with PFF pass blocking grade, and Hunt and like the other Miami offensive linemen had like the easiest assignments in the NFL. And so it's like, well, yeah, of course your pass blocking looks good when you only have to hold up for for 2 seconds. 2.3 seconds average time to throw.
And that's why people always had, and I specifically had, concerns about getting Patriots offensive linemen after they left when they had Tom Brady, because they got the ball out so freaking quickly, they didn't have to block. So that's definitely a big part of it. I'm surprised Hunt got as much as he did as well. But that's the thing. That's why you have to force them to get to a second and third read, because their offensive line is bad. So you're playing into their hands if you play off. It's a thing where you kind of got to be risky versus them, in my opinion, and they haven't done that. So do they do that now? I think you have to again.
Okay. Mr. Bonesy, thanks for the comment. What's up? At this point, I skipped like a whole chat, but we said, how do we think Rodgers is going to do against
some
the
people
49ers?
got mad. It's okay.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll go back and look at some of the other comments, but I can't. Again, if you're a member, I'll go through it. After that, it's kind of like whatever I see, whatever comes in. So definitely consider becoming a member. So he asked Dakota, thank you. So Gary asked, how do we think Rodgers is going to do? Rodgers is going to do against the 49ers. What do you think? How do you think the Jets are going to handle San Francisco? I mean, you obviously have Nick Bosa, you have Javon Hargrave, you have Fred Warner. They're going to be without Greenlaw. Charvarius Ward had a very good year last year. What do you expect from the Jets? How do you think they're going to play also? You think they play run first? Because San Francisco's front four, other than Bosa, is not very good against the run.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I think they do. I think they try to ball control this defense, kind of ease Rodgers in, get ahead of the sticks, get some good yards on first down, take your shot on second, second and 3, second and 4, take those shots down the field, third down, be conservative. I think it's going to be more of a ball control, slow rolling type of game. I don't think you're going to see a 38-35 shootout. I think you're looking at, 17-14, 17-13, 20-17, something like that. I don't see a high, octane offense in this game. So I think they're trying to get rid of the ball quick, run the ball. Again, take those shots in advantageous situations. It's gonna be really interesting. It's interesting to see like an actual offense and what it's going to do. But I think in general, the Jets are going to be a ball control type of team. Keep that defense rested. And especially against the 49ers, like you said, like they can be run on a little bit. So I think that's where they steer. They're going to run. I think Rodgers has 25, 30 pass attempts this game, but it's not going to be anything really over that. I think it's going to be a lot of running.
So I think the matchup is actually very interesting because if you think about it, you have the quarterbacks, right? But then you have both teams, the top running backs in the league, right? McCaffrey's number 1, Brees at worst is number 3. Then you have, you're talking about Trent Williams if he comes back, whatever. The Jets have Tyron Smith, right? Just behind Trent Williams, like definitely one of the best, left tackles in the game. You have, just the kind of the setup is very interesting. I could see this becoming like a running, kind of a run, both teams gritting the ball out on the ground and not passing as much as you said. And then, again, both teams' run defenses are suspect. Now, the 49ers run defense last year just wasn't tested that often. I think they faced the fewest rushing attempts in the NFL. They also ran the ball more than any other team because they were just dominating. So they just kept it on the ground. But then you have a team like the Jets where they kind of masked their run defense deficiencies statistically, because what ended up happening is there were a lot of times where they knew the run was coming because they were down by so much. So they just, sat there and kind of played run. So they're ultimately their stats are like mediocre, whereas their actual run defense wasn't as good as that. So, but I think both teams, I think last year the Jets finished 14th in run defense DVOA and the 49ers finished 15th. So like very similar. I do think there's going to be a lot of running in this game. I do think also if the game ends up that that 17-14, 20-17, I think the Jets have a very good shot of pulling it out, because the way the 49ers played for most of last year, they just blew teams out. I think if you keep it close, especially if you knock Purdy around a little bit, I do think the Jets have a good chance in that case. I don't necessarily think they're going to win the game, but I do think if they can hold it that way and they can hold it to, a low scoring kind of slugfest, in that way, I do think the Jets could pull it.
Yeah, when you start talking about like, okay, run ball control type of game, like look at the defensive lines. Okay, I'm taking our defensive line over theirs, and even if they're somewhat, they have both. Okay, they're equal. Fine, let's say they're equal. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt. The offensive lines, you're taking the Jets offensive line right now, or the Niners. Even if they have Trent Williams, their left guard to right tackle, I'm not overly impressed with. So if they're going to try to ball control and run the ball, this is an offensive line the Jets should be able to take advantage of. So I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball on the Jets, at least up the middle. Now it's different if you're talking about like East and West and you're getting Debo involved and all of that stuff. That's a little bit of a different story. But again, I do think the Jets should be better there, because Clark is 10 times a tackler that Whitehead is, and again, Tony Adams and Michael Carter and all that stuff. So I do think we'll have the advantage in the trenches. So if they want to play that game, I think that favors the Jets. let him run for 2 yards on first and second down, and then you're forcing Brock Purdy to take a 5-step drop on third down because, like, realistically, Kittle's a solid player. He's getting a little bit older. Ayuk's a really good player. I'm confident that Sauce is a better corner than Ayuk is a receiver. And then Debo, he's a gadget guy, but like Debo in terms of like, hey, Debo has to run a 10-yard dig on 3rd and 10. Like I'm not terrified of Debo running routes. I'm terrified of him on second and 3 getting a jet motion and getting a sweep or something like that. Like that's Debo. So if they're going to try to ball control and play that type of game, I think that favors the Jets. So hopefully that happens. And in terms of like what do I expect like from Rodgers against them? Again, I don't expect a lot of passing attempts, 25 to 30. Ball getting out pretty quickly, like Bonesy said, take a deep shot, Miami style in London to open up the game, deep shot to Brandon Marshall down the sideline. Like I would love that. He's going to get guys to jump once or twice and he'll take that deep shot. And again, I do think that they will be able to win in the trenches against the 49ers. And then you'll have those deep shots on again, second and 3 type of plays, and then third downs to get the first down. But if they can get ahead of the 6 on first down, which is something that's a novel concept to us because the Jets are consistently 2nd and 12 type of team, or 2nd and 15 because of a false start, or whatever, or 1st and 15 because of a false start. So yeah, if they can get ahead of the 6 a little bit, you'll see some of those deep shots. If they're not able to get ahead of the 6, I do think they'll be pretty relatively conservative in this game against the 49ers, kind of figure them out a little bit, and then maybe towards the end of the game they air it out a little bit more. But I think at first they're going to kind of play a little bit conservative.
Yeah, so this is an interesting point. I think Rodgers is going to take what the defense gives him. Don't forget, we have been practicing against this scheme all summer. San Francisco runs the same scheme. What's our weakness? Run screens and quick passes. And so the Jets could very well try. I mean, Rodgers likes to throw screens more than anyone else. Just again, dump it off to Brees, let him work in space, dump it, short passes, things like that. I mean, this is the way Rodgers plays basically. A lot of it is screens and short, quick passes, and the rest of it is deep ball. So it's kind of like if you can succeed
vertical and short, there's no middle.
Yeah. I mean, there's not a lot of middle. So if he can kind of get them, to creep up because he's throwing all those short passes, and then get 1 or 2 deep shots to Garrett Wilson, to Mike Williams, they can be successful even with let's say even if the 49ers have they do have talent on defense, but I still think the Jets can get it going against them. I do think blocking Nick Bosa is going to be a challenge, especially if Bosa lines up on Morgan Moses. I'm not as worried about him against Tyron Smith, but against Moses, I mean, I think Moses is good, but Bosa's a top 2-3 edge rusher in the league, and so that definitely will be a battle. But again, if you get the ball out quickly, especially, I mean, if you get it out the opposite side of Bosa, you can, you can wreak havoc, and again, as we said with Miami, prevent the pass rush from even mattering.
Yeah, and Morgan Moses isn't Tyron Smith, but he's also not Breno Giacomini or some of these other guys we've had in the past, or Wayne Hunter, or who was it, McDermott or whatever his name was a few years ago. So like Moses is a solid right tackle in the league. So yeah, like Bosa will win that matchup and stuff. I'm not like he's not going to be just eviscerating one of the tackles we've had in the past. So yeah, you have to be concerned about him. But again, I think it's a situation where they will be more ball control, so you don't have to worry as much about Bosa, and that's for that reason. You don't want to take 7-step drops against Bosa if he's singled up, and if he is, then if it is a situation where you're taking a 7-step drop, obviously chip them. They run a lot of like tighter formations, so you have some flexibility with like getting guys to chip and then still be involved in the routes and things like that. So he's obviously concerned though, right? Like you said, he's a top 5 defensive end in the league, so you can't just say, "Oh, we'll be fine against him." Like, no, you have to plan against him. But I think it's not going to be a game where they have to air it out and all of that. So, or I don't think it's a game they want to air it out. So I don't think it's going to be as big of a concern. And obviously, just run away from him.
Yeah. So this is another interesting question for Mr. Bonesy. If you have to choose one not to play, McCaffrey or Trent, which one do you choose? I'll preface this by saying when it was Trent or Ayuk, I'd rather Trent not play every day of the week. I'm much more concerned with Trent Williams than I am with Brandon Ayuk. But McCaffrey or Trent Williams, which one?
It's really hard because like McCaffrey's obviously like super, super dynamic, but running and like he's more than just a running back because he is a receiver as well. He gets involved in a lot of the concepts and stuff. But like how much is he going to be able to go off in the running game considering their offensive line if Trent Williams is out. So I would say I would choose Trent Williams just because he limits McCaffrey, obviously. Then he also limits the passing game as well. Like you have who is their left tackle? Okay, so yeah, McCaffrey individually, like McCaffrey's a great player, but if he's running behind an ass offensive line, then he's not going to be able to do anything. Just like it made no sense getting Le'Veon Bell. You have the worst offensive line in the league with one of the more patient running backs in the NFL. It never made sense. So he's not going to be able to run the ball behind a bad offensive line versus a great defense. And how long is he going to have to pass the ball to McCaffrey or dump it down to McCaffrey? Well, he's been able to dump it down to McCaffrey plenty. We saw that versus the Panthers, how much they dumped it down to him in space, but he's not going to be able to necessarily be an effective receiver either if Jermaine Johnson is breathing down Brock Purdy's neck in 2 seconds because they have a backup left tackle. So I'm always going to take. I think Trent Williams is the number one tackle in the NFL. And to me, tackles make more of an impact than a running back any day of the week, even though McCaffrey is super versatile. But give me Trent Williams not playing.
Yeah, I would definitely lean that way. I am fully confident that Trent Williams is going to play week 1. They got Ayuk done, but now they're going to figure out with Trent Williams. I
don't know how though. They have so much money doled out to other guys. I don't know how it works out with him because he's not getting paid a lot of money. Like he's going to want a lot of money.
One of his issues is that he has no guaranteed money on his deal this year. So I imagine that the first step would be guaranteeing his contract. He's set to make $20 million this year. Close to $21 million if you look at his roster bonuses and workouts. Although he forfeited the workout bonus, so it would be close to 20. Yeah, no, his base salary is $20 million this year. So the thing is, the top of the market at the position is, I think per season, I think as right tackle actually is $28.5 million. Yeah, that's a lot of money to give him for this year. But I assume what they'll do is they would turn it into a signing bonus. They'll pay it to him up front, but they'll spread it out over several years. He probably won't get to $28.5 million. They'll give him a little bit of a discount, but he just wants to get paid. They'll guarantee most of the deal for this year, and then he'll be back. I'm not I have no illusions whatsoever that he will. I mean, obviously I would be thrilled, but just like I don't think Reddick is going to be there week 1, I have almost no doubt in my mind that Williams will be there.
I'm going to stay on the faithful side. I'm going to say that he's not going to play. The Jets are going to whoop Brock Purdy and he's going to pull a Chris Jones. The Chiefs losing to the Lions, same thing. The Niners are going to get waxed by the Jets, and the Niners are going to have to realize how much they have to pay him. I'm going to be on the positive side here.
Okay, I mean, look, I would love that. Obviously, I think again, I would take the trade-off of the Jets not having Reddick and the Niners not having Williams. I think the difference is night and day. And so, obviously, and in a way, what I could see happening is, how Reddick is holding out in part because I think he thinks, they're going to stink week 1 against San Francisco and then they're going to have to pay me. Williams is like, well, I'm going to stay out against the Jets. They're going to kick you and then you're going to have to pay me, like you said. So each of them kind of playing leverage against the other one, and only one of them can be right.
Yeah. It's again, I'm gonna. If you had to choose Trent Williams versus Reddick, like again, you're talking about a probably a decent offensive line with him. Without him, they are probably bottom 10 offensive line, if not even worse. Like they're not a good offensive line without Trent Williams right now, especially considering I think their right tackle is out as well for this game.
Oh, he is? McKivitz?
I could be wrong, or maybe. Okay, so sorry, they lost the right tackle in free agency. Okay.
No, what happens is they're starting a rookie left guard because their starter and their backup both got hurt, and then the rookie won the job. So they like him. He was a 3rd-round pick. Dominic, I think it's pronounced Puny, something like that. Puni, not Y. But anyways,
Puny versus the Jets. That's all I know.
Yeah, no. He's going up against Quinn Williams. So yeah, they definitely have a lot of issues on the offensive line, especially as pass blockers. So yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see, especially if they don't have Trent. Yeah, someone mentioned Chuck Clark, and he said, let's see, Hawk said, I'm really curious to see what version of Chuck Clark we're going to get. Is he going to be a sure tackling Raven self, or is he going to be completely washed? What do you think?
Yeah, he never won obviously part of it's athleticism, but he didn't win with the Ravens because of athleticism. It was because of technique, and your technique and your smarts don't just leave your body. Like he still has that. So I have faith he'll still be the same player, but as Saba has discussed with both of us, and we brought up the point that like he's going to be playing a little bit more high than we want him to. So I do think he's a little bit miscast in this Jets defense. So I think people may look at him with the Ravens and say, oh, he's a better player with the Ravens, but with the Ravens, he was allowed to be in the box more. But because with the Jets, you want Tony Adams to be the strong safety to align, man coverage against tight ends and slot receivers, that Chuck Clark is going to be asked to play high a little bit more, which again is a miscast for him. You want him more in the box. So I still think he'll be the same player or a similar player that he was, but in a worse role for him. But with that being said, again, massive upgrade to Whitehead nonetheless.
Why do you think the Jets do that? First they had Whitehead, who they used high a lot more than they should have. They used Whitehead as their deep safety more often than they used Adams last year. Yeah. And then they look, I like Chuck Clark a lot, but why on earth? Like last year, they were fully prepared before Clark got injured to start Whitehead and Clark as their two safeties.
Yeah, why? Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if it's a physicality thing. They like that physicality in the box. They like hard hitters. Maybe they thought Whitehead was a better tackler. And it's so funny with Whitehead, that offseason, it's like you hear how sound of a tackler he is. And literally the first game I watched of him against the Falcons, he missed 3 tackles versus Cordell Patterson. Yeah. What is this? So maybe is it because the Jets don't value safety and just throw anybody back there? I really don't know. It's a little bit confusing to be transparent about hey, why not get a guy who could play a little bit more high than a Chuck Clark? But maybe they like the versatility of him being able to play in the box too, and be able to rotate, him down as well. So it's a little bit of a question that I can't necessarily answer why they would have Chuck Clark playing high. Again, well, I know why, because Tony Adams needs to be in man coverage, but why not then get a more rangy safety to play alongside of him? Hard. It's really that's legitimately hard to tell. Again, there's some moves they make that we can question and not understand their mindset. Again, Dalvin Cook, massive move for the Cowboys. What did Tom Pelissero say? That it was like a groundbreaking move or whatever. It's just it's crazy. So they make decisions that we don't necessarily agree with and are stupid sometimes. It just is what it is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So Hawk said he thinks Clark was going to have limited mobility coming off an ACL, and he wasn't an athletic freak as it is now. They put in a position where Peters McCarron. I don't know. There's plenty of strong free safeties who don't have great speed.
I know you saw that hit versus the Giants, Hawk. It's okay. He's still got it. I get it. It was going to greatly affect his mobility. These guys are all elite athletes. So can you keep up with an elite athlete if you're legitimately injured? No. But you're assuming that, hey, it happened in camp, last year. He's had over a year to recover from it. Everything we've heard has been positive. We haven't been hearing Clark getting beaten and stuff all the time. So I think he'll be fine.
Yeah, I think I agree with that too. Anyway, you set up to go to 12:30, so it's 12:30. So we're just going to wrap this up. Guys, thanks for joining. I apologize that I can't get to all the comments in the chat, but we'll be here for 4 hours if we do that. So yeah, please, thank you so much for joining. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Subscribe to jetsxfactor.com, discount code 80, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you. Take care. Have a good one.